A very good morning to you this Monday morning. You're welcome along, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after that weekend of sport when several evil empires re-emerged to triumph again, or else you're just a delighted Saracens and Manchester City fan. Fair play to you if you are. Well, especially the Man City fans. You've come through some stuff, but Saracens fans, are you real? Anyway, we're going to be talking about all that and the weekend's GA action. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us here on OTB AM, you can do so through a hashtag on Twitter, @OffTheBall or @OffTheBallAM. And you can also just leave a comment on the YouTube stream or the Facebook stream. Owen, how are you?
Good. When you said evil empire, I thought you meant, the re-emergence of the Louth footballers or something like that. In actual fact, you were mentioning Kilkenny, really. Kilkenny winning a hurling game is just the emergence of an evil empire. That's the one thing you forgot to say.
I was thinking all the evil empires except the Cork hurlers managed to triumph over the weekend. So, no, that's... I like, this Kilkenny team are an underdog team.
Yeah?
I mean, that's like an underdog team with TJ Reid playing as well as he's ever played.
Yes, for sure, and no longer...
So not really, they shouldn't have been that many big underdogs, should they?
No, were they underdogs for the game?
I don't know, people were tipping them.
It was a trendy bet to bet on Dublin at the weekend, and as Dublin tend to do in hurling, they tend to let you down in that regard, where you think that there's going to be a big upset around the corner, and then it just doesn't happen. But I'm not sure, one of the big kind of talking points going into this was that it was anybody but Saracens when it came to the sporting weekend, as you alluded to there. And unfortunately, the bad guy wins sometimes. Sometimes...
A lot.
Yes.
In real life, the bad guy wins a lot.
But not often is it the case where the bad guy wins and then specifically the bad guy that is Billy Vunipola gets, cheered off and applauded like the hero that some Saracens fans view him to be.
Did he not get booed as well?
By certain sections of the sport. You'd imagine that everybody in red was cheering him off. So a dispiriting afternoon for people who like the good guy, I think.
Yeah.
And that's me saying that Leinster are the good guys in this regard.
I know, it's mad, isn't it? You feel it's like,
Lesser of two evils and all that.
Yeah. You must be, as a Munster fan, pretty happy and pretty confident about next week now?
I would say Johan van Graan is looking at
licking
this.
Licking
his lips, but the whole talk about a potential crisis at Munster has also been coloured with the fact that they could easily take Leinster out in the semi-final of the Pro 14 because A, they'll be celebrating the Champions Cup all week, or B, they'll be down and dishevelled and battered or whatever it may be, which seems to be the case this week, and that actually
softened up, I believe.
Yeah, softened up, but which may actually paper over some of the cracks at Munster, which may be a very fatalistic view on things, but that might happen should they win this weekend. I don't know. Looking at some of Leo Cullen's comments after Saturday, and I know we're going to get into this in the papers very shortly, but you kind of think to yourself that they haven't been helped by the chipping away at their squad depth over the last 12 months, Leinster. The departure of Joey Carbery, the departure of Jordy Murphy, the intangible knock-on effect that would have on the Leinster team, whatever that might have done in terms of squad depth, in terms of pushing people to hold on to their jersey, or in the case of Jordy Murphy, an actual starter in last year's European Cup final. And then you add on to that the departure of Egan Eoin. You talk about the impending departures of Jack McGrath and Sean O'Brien as well. And all of a sudden, this formidable outfit that we had last year, one of the best club teams we've seen in Irish rugby, has been, I don't want to say disassembled, but it's getting that way. It's going to be a very, very new look Leinster side over the next couple of seasons should they get back and actually win the European Cup again.
Yeah, it was like last season we didn't realise was the absolute peak in terms of the playing staff and players they had available to them. When you think that next season the team that won the Heineken Cup last year would be vastly different. There'll be no Sean O'Brien, it looks like no Rob Kearney, no Egan Eoin, no Joey Carbery, no Jordy Murphy, no
Jack McGrath,
and hopefully Dan Levy will be back, but it could well be the end of that season before he comes back, given the injury was so horrific. So and James Lowe will obviously have arrived since. And it doesn't look like they're about to make any big signings in the meantime, so I'm not sure what's going to happen.
No, and Cullen has said that in the aftermath, that they can't just go out and buy world-class players. And I think it's not sour grapes, because I think you're speaking about it in the context of the opponent that beat you on Saturday.
No, in fact, it's supposed to be. Well, sorry, you shouldn't have any sour grapes because you don't really care, but everybody else can have sour grapes who are supporters of one team. One of the narratives over the weekend was like, everybody should row in behind Leinster I watched the game in the company of a bunch of Munster fans who were cheering for Saracens. What a disgrace. Like, what are you talking about? It's exactly what that's how fan culture works. There were no Man United fans cheering for Liverpool to make it through to the Champions League final. I would say none.
Right, so what if you're a Manchester United fan from Ireland and Liverpool happens to have 7 or 8 Irish players?
Absolutely not. Are you a fan or not?
I get that.
What does it mean?
The national thing changes something. It definitely changes something. Like you can't
be given out to Munster fans for not wanting Leinster to succeed. You can't.
No,
that's the whole point of fan culture, is that you support your team, and one of the best parts about it is that you actually enjoy the difficulties that your rivals have, instead of tut-tutting going, well, obviously, because the argument is exactly the same argument we're always having. If this doesn't matter, and the only thing that ever matters is the senior team, what's the point of having these teams in the first place?
Fair enough, but also, I think it's totally fair for a Munster fan to say, I want Leinster to win.
Absolutely. I mean, then they're not really a Munster fan. They're not
Alan Quinlan wanted Leinster to win. Are you saying that Alan Quinlan is not a real Munster fan?
We can have that conversation with Alan Quinlan.
Yeah, well...
Instead of you getting full outraged on his behalf, right?
I'm not getting full outraged. You're the one who brought it up.
Yeah, but he's also a professional working in the sport who has played for Ireland and probably did play with Rob Kearney with some of the players who were playing and Sean O'Brien. That's a completely different situation, right? So let's take a fan who hasn't played professional rugby and isn't a sports media professional.
And you're saying that it's... So you've suddenly kind of moved towards the idea that it's unacceptable for a Munster fan to be a little bit disappointed that Leinster lost?
I mean, I think that they're not involved, really. Like,
well, what do you mean? As in, like
that's the point. The point is that you shouldn't be giving out to Munster fans who wanted Leinster to lose.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough.
Absolutely nobody's business. And after that, you pick if you want. Go and be one of those half and half scarf people. If that's who you are, Owen. If that's at your core. If you want the Cork footballers to beat the only or Galway or whoever it is, like, happy days for you.
There's one thing I can guarantee you that's worse than half and half scarves. It is the people who have this bizarre gripe with half and half scarves. Like, who just by some sort of definition automatically say that half and half scarves are bad.
They are. They're shambles.
How are they? Okay, explain to me how are they a shambles? Because suddenly you've...
half Man United, half Man City.
Well, see, that's the extreme example of it.
No, well, I mean, it exists.
Some people think that just by the definition of a half and half scarf is bad. It's not. If you want to go to the Champions League final, you spend thousands of pounds to go to Madrid, and you fancy Liverpool versus Spurs souvenir scarf, by all means buy one. I don't get this weird obsession with people who buy half and half scarves. They're actual human beings as well. Stop patronising them.
All right. Here's what's coming up on the show this morning. We're going to bring you the back pages in 3-4 minutes time. We're going to bring you Anfield reaction from the aftermath of the game yesterday. We've got Premier League fallout with Nathan, and Stephen Doyle is going to join us in the studio. Stephen was at Brighton, Nathan was at the game at Anfield. We'll also hear from Matt Doherty. He spoke with Nathan after that game. Sports news around about 8:45. Leinster fan Alan Quinlan at 8:50, and our GA roundup at 9:10. Features Clare's David Fitzgerald and Tommy Walsh, and also an interesting clip of Brian Gavin speaking with John Maughan after Offaly almost kicked Meath out of the football championship. You can tweet us this morning, #OTB AM. We'll bring you through the papers now. Not great headlines. I'm going to start with blue sky's the limit. Okay. Pep targets a third straight Prem crown, and he is ready to spend big to win it. And Klopp warns gutted Reds must be perfect to catch them. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. How gutted are they? Did they think that it was going to be real? The crowd, obviously, I don't know I was listening to the game on the radio, and there's this surge of noise around the crowd. And Nathan was like, all right, let's go to the Amex. And it's like, I don't know why the crowd is... And Stephen Doyle's like, I don't know why everybody's... I don't know what's going on because there's no goals here. And Nathan's like, all right, well, it's obviously somebody in the crowd at Anfield had made a mistake and told everybody, oh, there's been a goal. Yeah, before Manchester City equalised as well, there seemed to be a murmur around Anfield that Brighton had actually gone 2-0 up. There's actually a picture of a fan going like this to people. So maybe that was an inside agent, just an Everton fan, just putting on a Liverpool jersey for the day. The Irish Examiner goes with off and running. Tip and Clare put down Munster marker with away day wins. Big results for them yesterday in the Championship. 7-year itch, Limerick's done Tip to tee up Senior Football Championship semi-final with Cork. Leinster played too much rugby at the wrong time, believes Donal Lenihan, and the greatest champions. Special 10-page section as Guardiola City pip Liverpool to the title. Okay, back page of the Irish Independent this morning is a picture of Porrick Maher and Liam Sheedy. looking pretty happy on Páirc Uí Chaoimh pitch yesterday after the game. What is that? What has he got written? M times M and ASD on his wristband there. City complete the job. Europe, the next frontier for rampant City, but there's no chance Guardiola will sacrifice domestic title. And ready to bounce back, Cullen insists Leinster not a million miles off after Saracens' loss. And Roscommon are through to face Mayo after a routine victory over Leitrim in the Football Championship yesterday.
The Times headline goes with the headline, the Times Ireland edition, I should say, goes with my toughest title. Guardiola joy as Manchester City retain crown and break Liverpool hearts with their win at Brighton. And Leo Cullen calls for youth investment.
My greatest triumph is the front of the Telegraph this morning, and that is Pep, but it's also Vincent Kompany. Guardiola hails City's history makers as he wins toughest title. Yeah, it's interesting. Who will they buy? We'll talk about that a little bit later on. What can they buy to add to that team at the moment?
The Irish Times goes with Tipperary and Clare make winning starts in Munster. Shane O'Donnell, they're pictured in the main story there. Guardiola thanks incredible Liverpool, says Dominic Fifield's story from the Amex Stadium. And Leinster will improve but not change the model, says Leo Cullen.
Shane O'Donnell's form maybe will make a lot of people think about having 5, 6, 7 months off. He was so amazing and so quick and started the game so fast yesterday that you're like, actually, it looks like he's never been away. City seal it is the back of the Herald this morning, and Kenny still upbeat despite Cat's defeat. Billy Batter's bullied blues is Brent Pope's verdict. I like the alliteration, at least there's a bit of effort going into that. Pep hailed Poole for pushing all the way to the end.
The Irish Daily Mail goes with not done yet. Waterford still in Munster mix, insists Fanning, but it's going to be an uphill battle for them now. And Rob Kearney says Reds lying in wait for wounded Leinster.
City just too good is the back of the Racing Post this morning. Guardiola's men 8-11 on for title hat-trick. So that's next season's prices if you want it. And Broome at the top. Darrenstown winner stakes claim to be O'Brien's Derby #1. So that's that follow on from that victory yesterday. The back page of the Sun goes with hard man. It's kind of like usually a sarcastic way of saying that somebody is gone above and beyond to show themselves that they're hard. Pep, this is my toughest ever title, and it's rage to be here. Munster's big guns are on alert after a double invasion. Neil Keegan has been in touch to say, lads, can we not talk about the rugby this morning? The cut is still too raw. And then he was back in touch to say, cheering for a rival losing is the scummiest part of sport. Most Munster supporters wanted Leinster to win. This isn't football. I mean, that's because football has a deeply embedded, centuries-old code where the fans understand what being a fan means. And it's like, not actually scummy. It doesn't matter because it's only sport. And so when I want your team to lose and you want my team to lose, it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't mean I hate you because of it. It's just a conversation that we have, and then we go on about our lives because it's just sport. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, then the Wolves fans would be able to tell you that as well. Chanting Raheem Sterling, he's top of the league at Anfield yesterday was kind of funny. Actually, absolutely hilarious, to be quite honest with you. And I see a lot of Liverpool fans very, very angry with Wolverhampton Wanderers supporters this morning.
Well done, Wolves.
They would say that they're scummy supporters.
Oh, it's just a high art of troll.
It really is. It's actually very, very impressive. Speaking of the football, my final newspaper is The Guardian. Pep's party is the back page. Barney Ronay says Manchester City come from behind to finish epic title race with a flourish.
Back at the Star is Peptacular. And it's Pep being given the bumps. Blues boss has treble in sight after edging epic title battle. So it's a treble. It's like, it is a treble. It's not the treble. It's
treble so far, according to Pep Guardiola. Because he's including the Community Shields.
I know, yeah. I mean, he's wrong.
So the FA Cup would make it like there is this sort of sense of contrived celebration about Manchester City, and I could be way off the mark here.
That's true, isn't it?
It like, just feels
you did the thing you're supposed to do. Well done.
Or the thing that you really want to do wasn't achieved.
No, it's like
it does feel that. Like when Liverpool, or if Liverpool win the Champions League, it won't be contrived celebration. It will be pure and utter joy because of what happened last year. Because it really, really still means something to them, even if the league may mean more.
Almost never win a Champions League.
Well, exactly. Whereas with this, the flip side is a little bit different. Like the double nature of it is a big achievement, but it just kind of feels that the Champions League was the one. It is still the one thing that this Manchester City team are missing, and Pep bringing them to that level would be a bigger achievement than winning 4 leagues in a row potentially, or a bigger celebration than that.
Yeah, so maybe they'll go on and win 4 leagues in a row, and that's like the greatness will be that they. I don't know, but it doesn't feel like they're a Champions League winning team at the moment, does it?
No, it doesn't. And
keep choking.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Like, we'll get into some of the stories, and like the one thing we wanted to touch on was actually this Manchester City story. I'm not sure how Liverpool fans feel about these comments this morning from Pep Guardiola. I'm not sure, are they patronising or is it just pure joy? I'm sure there wasn't any kind of intent behind it, because like he talks about the most difficult title race because of the quality of Liverpool and the rivalry we faced all season. We made 100 points last season and we had to make 98 this season to retain it, so it means so much. We have to say congratulations to Liverpool and thanks, because they helped us to push and increase our standards. Thank you to our opposition, to our closest rivals. You're very, very good at being second, is what Guardiola is saying. Liverpool helped us to where we are because for the last 2 months we knew we couldn't lose a single point. They had an incredible season, but we did a little better. Like he talks about what they're actually going to do in the transfer market, or suggests what they might do in the transfer market. You talked about Manchester City willing to spend big money, and he says last year we only added Riyad Mahrez and he scored an incredible goal today, so we'll decide what the team needs now. To me that suggests that they're going to make a little bit more than just one signing this season. And like, if you, it's hard to not accept that Manchester City have an embarrassment of riches in terms of their playing personnel right now. But even when it kind of came down to it, the Kevin De Bruyne injury struggles all season, getting the best or getting a much better version out of Alexander Zinchenko at left back this season, like there have been some very good managerial feats, if I can put it to that extent, from Pep Guardiola this year.
Well, getting Vincent Kompany back to be a relevant player who ultimately is unbelievably important at the end of the season.
That's another one. And also as well, the way they had that wobble around Christmas, and John Stones was speaking about the fact that there was some very kind of tough conversations had around that time, and almost Pep changed his mentality. I don't think Pep is one of these coaches that even claims to be somebody who avoids the idea of a trophy. Like, there's great detail by Jamie Jackson this morning in The Guardian, talking about how Pep Guardiola went to the Etihad Stadium and actually kissed the Premier League trophy before he became Manchester City manager. Like, he has this obsession with trophies. He didn't mind that this was the one thing that he wanted to get in terms of his domestic season. Like, it's not fully process driven, next game. But around Christmas time, it changed. It was like, we need a win here badly. And I think that alteration deserves credit. The kind of human level that was required there.
Yeah, it's true. It's just that it's all really difficult to give too much credit for the money and the investment, and the fact that you can literally blitz anybody for any player in the world at the moment that you want, you can have, because you have all the money in the world.
Believe me, my heart's not in this glorification of Manchester City either. It's a really, really hard thing to do, but I do think there is some level of credit required.
All right, we just want to show you this. It is the Irish News back page today. Do we have it? Red Hands rise to the challenge. This was expected to be a cakewalk for Tyrone. Some of us certainly expected it to be a cakewalk for Tyrone. But they win by 6 points in the end, even though they score 1-5 in the last 5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
They were definitely a point or two down, and Derry much better than they had been and expected to be, given that they were Division 4. And I think they had an injury just before throw-in as well. And it was like, oh, all right, well, this is going to be very straightforward for Tyrone. I think Tyrone probably sleptwalked a little bit into that too. But look, that's Tyrone's Ulster campaign up and running, and they're going to be hard bet this year.
They probably will be, yeah. Like the whole idea that they revolutionise the way they play in the league, I don't think is. I think that's been overplayed a little bit. I think that we'd seen signs of this last summer at times, and we saw it again yesterday. Like, Colin McShane has turned into one of the better inside forwards in the country so far this year. Granted, the big boys haven't started playing proper football yet, but if you were handing out All-Stars right now for football in 2019, he'd probably be on the All-Star list straight away.
How did your power rankings hold up? I mean, obviously you got Tyrone beating Derry, that was fair enough. You got all the rest of them right too, didn't you? You definitely would have got, say, like, the Limerick footballers beating the Tipperary. How did that work out for you, Eoin?
Well, so would you have put Tipperary ahead of Limerick in the power rankings? Let me ask you that.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't do. I'm humble enough not to do power rankings, Eoin.
Well, I think doing power rankings is actually a great show of humility.
London 32, Limerick 31. The Limerick footballers are the 31st ranked team in Ireland. I don't see Tipperary on that list.
Power rankings.
Oh, the Tipperary, the 18th best team. 18th to 31. What a precipitous fall, and it wasn't even close. That's what they're saying. Screw you, Owen.
At least
this is for you, Sheehan. We're coming for you next.
There's a reason why Tipperary are 18th and not like 10th. Like they're it's not like that this is
there's 8 teams between 10 and 8.
But this is the very reason why a two-tier championship would work, is that the second tier, Tipperary are, according to my power rankings there, are in the second tier of counties. They would be in it. Like I see somebody, is this Shane McGran, the Irish Daily Mail, says this is a reason why a two-tier championship wouldn't work, because it'd be a tier 1 versus a tier 2 team and we wouldn't get this encounter. But like by my kind of view on it, if you get relegated from Division 2, you're in tier 2, therefore you're up against Limerick, and this shock would be possible. That's me conveniently changing the subject away from my power rankings. I accept.
You can get your
everything else,
Limerick and tip scarf there anytime you want.
Everything else is pretty much bang on.
All right, good man on. Everything else is pretty much bang on. Not embarrassed enough by his own.
We'll change the power rankings. London also had put in a good performance against Galway, so
they did, yeah.
The two of them might be set for rises.
All right, Jonathan Higgins captured Liverpool fans' reaction to yesterday's drama as the club's season may end yet in European glory, but their wait for a Premier League title will go on.
Hello and welcome to Anfield. It's finished Liverpool 2, Wolves 0, but the wait for a Premier League title at Anfield continues. There's a lot of disappointment around with the fans, a little bit of hope to the Champions League final in Madrid, but we're going to find out what the fans thought of all of that.
It hurts, Jonathan. It does hurt. It's been a phenomenal season. Played some magnificent football. But you have to say, 14 wins on the spin for Manchester City. It's a tremendous effort. To finish second to that team is no disgrace.
Yeah, it's pretty gutting. 2-0, really good win. But you could feel it in the stadium there when Brighton went 1-up. The whole stadium erupted, and I don't know whether the players knew what was happening on the pitch, but we certainly knew what was happening in the stand. So although you should be celebrating a 2-0 win, and we are for the season it's tough because it was out of your control what was going to happen on the other side. So it's a disappointing end, but pipped by a point, but there's next year.
I suppose it's a mixed emotion where you end up winning 2-0. But you know that the result, I suppose, is in someone else's hands of winning the league.
I'm down. I think, I'm happy because Liverpool have won, but I'm down because we've not won the league title. It felt like we were going to win it today, but ultimately you've got to recognise that Manchester City, unfortunately for us, have been slightly better over the course of the season. 97 points though has been absolutely unbelievable. This Liverpool side is a side that we can be so proud of, a side that we all get behind. It's the start of something special here, Jonathan. It's not the end of something. This is the start of something special. We've got Madrid in a couple of weeks' time, where we'll hopefully go on and win the Champions League, and next season Manchester City better watch out because we're coming for your league title.
That spell we had where we dropped points against Leicester, West Ham, Man United, Everton, I felt that was going to cost us because you're up against such a formidable opponent. I thought the United game away was a game where we really could have twisted the knife and got 3 points out of the game rather than 1.
Because again, you have games where the draws, you have 7 draws in the season. You kind of look at it and go, small bits would have made a difference.
Listen, I think loads of fans will tell you that there's loads of areas. You can talk about Leicester, you can talk about West Ham, Manchester United, Everton. No, I'm not nitpicking, because you write that Liverpool side off at their peril. They've won games and they've snatched victory from the jaws of defeat at times, and they've snatched victory from the jaws of a draw. This Liverpool side, that you can't nitpick on them.
I'm worried, to be honest. But going to Madrid, defeat is not an option, Jonathan. Like, you've got to finish the season with that trophy. But, Big Ears coming back for a 6th time would be some consolation prize.
Yeah, I have to say I am. I think Tottenham, don't get me wrong, it could be anybody's, but I'm really confident. Liverpool have, I think, a far better calibre of player. They're not going to want to feel like they felt today, coming so close to winning silverware, and they certainly can't go to the end of this year without silverware.
Liverpool can and hopefully will lift number 6 because we've got that experience. We know what defeat tastes like in the Champions League final. These players know what defeat tastes like in the Champions League final, and they won't want that feeling again. Tottenham, they're going into the biggest game of their entire lives, and how they deal with that, I'm not sure they can. They've lost a third of their games, give or take, in the Premier League this season. Liverpool have lost 1. We are miles better than Tottenham Hotspur, and I would say 9 times out of 10, 90 times out of 100, we win this game of football coming up, and I will be putting money on Liverpool lifting number 6 in Madrid.
So there we are from a sunny Anfield, where there's a little bit of disappointment in the fans, but everyone is looking forward to Madrid. I'm Jonathan Higgins for OTB AM.
Good man, Jonathan. Thanks for that. And some familiar faces amongst the Liverpool supporting fraternity there this morning. We're going to bring you some reaction from the Brighton game yesterday. I suppose I should really call it the City game. But Brian Kerr was on commentary duty alongside Stephen Doyle. We'll bring you that in a couple of minutes' time. In the meantime, Nathan Murphy, good morning to you. How you doing? You were also at Anfield yesterday.
I certainly was. How's it going?
Good, yeah. I was listening on the radio in that first half when that surge of noise came through and you threw to Stephen in the expectation that there'd been a goal, because otherwise what the hell was going on? And Stephen's like, I don't really know why everybody's what's going on.
Yeah, there was this crazy 5 or 6 minutes where Anfield just erupted, and suddenly everybody around us, because we're sitting right in front of a large group of Liverpool supporters, they all start celebrating. They start looking at us to see what we know. I'm not hearing anything. I'm shouting back at my producer, what's going on? And he's like, I'm not hearing anything. And it turns out that the Wolves supporters were just taking the piss. And that they would start celebrating every so often. The Liverpool supporters, so they're camped down in the Anfield Road end in a little corner, but there's Liverpool supporters above them, there's Liverpool supporters beside them. Obviously, when they start cheering, all the Liverpool fans start cheering. It's like this Mexican wave of noise that suddenly flies around the stadium. But then nobody knew what to trust, because actually about 90 seconds after the first time that happened, Brighton did actually score. And the whole stadium actually was probably the loudest noise I've heard at Anfield all season, more than any goal, because the whole place, it was just delirium. It was a sense of, can't believe this is actually happening. Liverpool were obviously confident that they would get the win yesterday, but I think everyone was sort of resigned to the fact that Manchester City were likely to win as well. So the fact they went behind, and I think, 83 seconds of just pure joy for the Liverpool supporters, probably lasted a bit longer because they were so busy celebrating they hadn't realised that City had equalised. Yeah,
it was a pity that equaliser happened so quickly, because for the proper drama of a final day to unfold, you definitely need a bit more jeopardy than there was. Because once it went 1-1, you were like, okay, well that was it. That was, if Brighton were going to get something from this game, it was going to be a single goal. And it was going to take City a while to equalise, and then it would have been a last gasp effort. But you just felt there was an inevitability about it at that stage.
Yeah, Brighton needed to build some sort of a resistance after they got that goal and grow in confidence and let Duffy and Dunk start to grow into the game and feel it out and feel as though, yeah, this is the sort of day people will remember us forever for. And then you can see it after 83 seconds, and like the touch from David Silva, the finish from Sergio Aguero. That's what City do. I was going to say all season long, but they haven't had to. Like, that is the first time they went behind in any of these 14 matches, and they didn't panic. There wasn't a split second of nerves, of doubt, of questioning, of, is it Liverpool's destiny? Maybe it's just not meant to be for us. No, they just went about it like cold-blooded killers and got their goal within 83 seconds. And I think there were still chances. Just watching back the highlights last night, there was a free kick just before half-time. There was an incident where there was a back pass that the referee didn't give the decision, where maybe there were flickers that Brighton could get an equaliser and get it back to 2-2. But generally, it seemed in that second half it was a stroll in the park for City.
Yeah, OK. This is Brian Kerr speaking with Steve-O afterwards. Man City won the title, but do they face a little bit of a rebuilding job? Here's the answer from Kerr. Have a look.
In my moments of idleness before the game today, I counted up the number of games Vincent Kompany's played in the last 4 seasons. Would you believe the total is 80, which makes it that he's averaged 20 games a season across all competitions in the last 4 years. One season he played 12 games. 2 seasons ago he played 12 games. So he hasn't been a major part of these victories in the last few seasons. He's been probably important as a captain. He's probably spent a lot of time in the medical room and in the gym and so on, and hanging about. I'm sure it's been very frustrating for him. The delight of him scoring the goal against Leicester on Monday obviously was a lot of that delight would have been driven by the frustration of not playing often enough. So, you know, Stones, Otamendi are there. Laporte has shown himself a class act. They may well add another player to that position. They've got Zinchenko, I don't think they'll try and sell Zinchenko this year. It looked like he was on the way out last year.
I don't think he can
yeah,
play that
well, I think he played the left back role very well. I mean, they won every game he's played. I think he's played 22 games in the Premier League between this year and last year, and they've won every one of them. I think he's played well. But I'm sure they'll have the squad. The question on Aguero, I mean, you know, I think 2 years ago the manager felt Jesus was going to be the one, Aguero was going to be the bit player, but he wasn't having that, and he proved himself again that the one thing he's adapted his game to what Guardiola wants. Aguero has had to become a chaser, a harasser, a nuisance to defenders as required by the manager, and while you're at it, just keep scoring on 32 goals I think this season, 21 in the league. So I think there's certainly another couple of seasons in him.
Yeah. Stephen's here. How are you doing?
Morning, Ger.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good trip back from Brighton?
Yeah, myself and Brian and Enda Cole, our producer, came back on the flight together. So just maybe a post-season pint was had on the way home, but that was it really. And,
all right.
But some good chat with Brian anyway on the way back, and I think it was a strange game. It was. I don't know if anybody. I'm sure anybody watches back the game, they'll see Brighton. Actually, funny enough, after the game, we went into. Brian gave Chris Hughton a bell, and he brought us over to his box over the other side of the stadium, and went in there, and it was just Hughton family party, end of season. Got to meet his brother Henry Hughton, who played for the Irish under-21s.
All right.
Back in the day, he was telling us all about. He played with Ronnie Whelan, played with Kevin Sheedy, and a lovely man. But it was just interesting to get that little bit of insight, seeing the family connected to the man involved in the football industry, because as we all know, it's such a cutthroat business.
Yep.
It's and then just to see this moment, I don't know if you saw yesterday, Chris Hughton with his granddaughter out on the pitch, and it was just nice to just see the family side of things, and just to see that there is, this network behind these people working in the biggest league in the world.
Yeah,
and,
I'll come back to you about that, because there's already people in the papers going, "Oh, did Chris Hughton get enough out of this Brighton team?" And you're like, "Oh, come on! They've survived. Let's see what he can do with another off season and trying to build on that." But speaking of family on the pitch, right? Nathan, congratulations! You've got over a million views for us here at Off the Ball.
Does it make me any money?
Who? I mean, obviously you put it on your work account, didn't you?
Certainly not.
Let's have a look at this. What is this, Nathan? Commentate over this.
This is the highlight of today, I think, for a lot of Liverpool fans. It was Mo Salah's daughter. So Mo Salah had just been out receiving the Golden Boot alongside Sadio Mane. His daughter refused to go back down the tunnel, grabbed the ball and runs half the length of the pitch and smacks it into the back of the net. And not only that, she got the big cheer. Like her dad, she liked the big cheer. She brought the ball back again and did it another couple of times.
Future star in the making.
It's one of the more depressing aspects of every final day is when all the players bring their kids out. And we bring our kids to football every Saturday morning and we think, maybe a little bit of work here, they might have a bit of talent, wonder what they could achieve. And then you watch, I think it was last season, Santi Cazorla's 2-year-old who can do 84 keepy-uppies, a little overhead kick and smack one into the top corner from 25 yards. You're thinking, there's some sort of natural talent here that maybe we don't quite possess.
Yeah. Our kids lost the genetic lottery.
Yeah, for
Do you
sure.
think, though, Nathan, that I was just watching some of the last moments there at Anfield, and we have to remember Liverpool have a massive game coming up. They're playing the Champions League final. But to have that kind of that day where you had the supporters out, there was a big party atmosphere, that kind of stays with the players heading into such a big game in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. And being in the mix zone afterwards, there was definitely not the despondency around Anfield because of what happened on Tuesday night against Barcelona. That changed the atmosphere of yesterday, of that final day, completely. For the supporters, for the players, there wasn't that deep devastation that you might have expected, considering how Liverpool have wanted to win this title for so long. And 2 months ago, I think if you've asked any Liverpool supporter, a month ago even, which they would have preferred, it was the Premier League, without question. But the manner of the comeback over Barcelona and the fact that Manchester City simply didn't give them a glimmer of hope throughout this, meant that actually, there was a sense there's still more to go. If they finish this season as European champions, it'll be a fair reflection of where they are, because I don't think there's any question that right now Liverpool and Manchester City aren't just the top two teams in England, they're the top two teams in European football at the moment. And that's a good place for Liverpool supporters to be. And the chant, I don't know if you heard it, the chant generally was, "We shall not be moved." A sense that for once, actually, This isn't a one-off. They're not just going to fall away quite quickly and they'll have to wait 6 or 7 years again for another title run. That all going according to plan, they should be thereabouts, contending for a Premier League and contending for a Champions League next season again, which means you're not too upset. And like some of the moments that they've had at Anfield this season, from Origi's late winner in the derby, Mo Salah's goal against Chelsea, the own goal against Tottenham, it's been a pretty special place to be for Liverpool supporters. If you're a season ticket there, I think you've enjoyed yourself this season.
Just on that point about Liverpool and Manchester City being the two best teams in Europe at the moment, like, it's an interesting possibility that we may have the two teams at the top pulling away from the rest. I think you were describing it as La Liga, Ger, that potential possibility. Like, is this the nearest we've ever come to that, Nathan, in your view? Because I think we were talking about this on Saturday, the most comparable situation we've had was a 2011-2012 title race, when that was a two-horse race pulling away by like 19 points from the rest of the pack. This year, it's even bigger again, and those two title races are the most similar that you can pick out from the Premier League era.
You'd have to think there is that chance when you just look through the money for the Champions League even this season. And I hadn't realised the full extent of the increase in prize money for the Champions League. Liverpool are going to get over 100 million for their Champions League performances alone, on top of whatever the 120 million they're going to get from the Premier League. Manchester City, Manchester United doubled their take from European football from last year. So definitely we're going to have a extension of the top six back to everybody else. And then within that, you would think that Manchester City and Liverpool are best positioned to kick on. The only question you would have is that there's not a huge amount of world-class players out there. And if you get a good manager, if you have a Maurizio Pochettino at Tottenham, or whoever Manchester United in 6 months' time end up with as their next manager, if you get a world-class manager with a good eye for players, who can develop players, I think you can make inroads pretty quickly. Jurgen Klopp has proven that if you have the scouts, if you have the network in place, that you can go and buy a player for what's probably 40 million, 50 million now, and bring them on to another level, you can close in. Definitely on Liverpool, it's just whether this Manchester City bandwagon could roll for years if Pep Guardiola has the motivation. But they're not without their weaknesses as well. They're going to have to go into the transfer market and find a replacement for Fernandinho. Is there a trust there in John Stones still? It seemed at the start of the season there was, but we heard Brian Kerr touching on it. Vincent Kompany came in for these battle-hardened games.
Yeah.
Kompany, it seems, is going to leave.
But so isn't the point about Kompany, though, they'll do the same thing with John Stones. They'll allow him to have a period where he grows as a footballer and becomes better. I think that the best John Stones Manchester City version is still to be seen, and that actually you would trust Guardiola, given that instead of burning Vincent Kompany out the way many managers would have done, they decided to keep him around, and lo and behold, he ends up being very important over these final 12 games.
The way he's managed Vincent Kompany has been exceptional, but I'm not sure if it was that thought out. I don't know if at the start of the season Pep Guardiola thought, I'll keep him here and I'll be using him as much as he did for that title run-in, because it seemed as though he'd settled on Stones and Laporte, and whatever happened, Stones fell out of favour. And I think it was largely maybe due to that game management, to that experience that Kompany has. But the spine of that Manchester City team is going to need replacing. You look through it from Kompany to Fernandinho to David Silva to Sergio Aguero. We're talking about players in their 30s that are the greatest players the club has ever had, and they're going to be needing to be replaced in the next couple of years. Gabriel Jesus does not look like he's ready or will ever be ready to be the next Sergio Aguero. So who is that? That's a huge decision. Clubs falter because they can't replace Sergio Aguero's 20 goals every single season. Now, City obviously can pick pretty much anybody in world football, but it's still a slight little question mark, and they're all slight little question marks. But you do sense that they're so well organised at boardroom level. They're in the Manchester United Alex Ferguson position, where they can strengthen from a position of strength. They're not desperately looking around. They're not going to have to let Fernandinho go. They can bring in, whether it's Rodri or whether it's Declan Rice, which doesn't look likely, but they can bring them in and give them 20 games and let Fernandinho have the 20 games as well next season. So they're in the best position of anybody in that league by a country mile. But Liverpool have more work to do, but have shown that they can do it. And the one thing, when you look back in the last couple of seasons, and we'll get into talking about best games, is that we have a proper rivalry in the Premier League now, up there with the Arsenal-Manchester United rivalry. Doesn't have the same characters like all of modern football, but in terms of the level they're at, in terms of the quality of their games, of what they mean,
it's a better
that's
quality.
Where Liverpool and Manchester City are.
I think it's
it is a better quality. Without question, the quality of football right now is better than it's ever been, simply because of pure
I just feel it's easy to forget about that Arsenal team. Like that Arsenal team under Arsene Wenger played some absolutely incredible football, and I remember at the time they used to get kind of criticised for maybe taking too much out of the ball, and they were trying to run the ball into the goal. But some of the football Arsenal played at that time.
That team that was rival of Man United didn't do that. Pires and Henry once had that thing where they screwed up the penalty, and everybody went, "Oh, this is taking it too far." But when at their peak, they were rapier-like. There was no messing around. All that fanning around came around later.
Let's also not forget to what extent Manchester City and Liverpool are now playing football at, where they are, as Nathan says, the continental leaders, and not only the standard they're playing, but in a model that is going to be copied. Like, it is a copycat game. People are going to be looking at exactly what they're doing and trying to copy that. And I know Arsenal, to a certain extent, people looked at them and they followed that model as well. But this is revolutionary stuff, and it's not the start of the revolution. We've seen this for the last few years. Like, this is the way football is played now, and it is in a decent amount down to what Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola have done in the last 2 seasons, in my view.
And also the money. I mean, it's the
but that doesn't take away from the fact that this is a better era of football than the Manchester United and Arsenal era was. We get carried away, as Nathan says, with the idea of characters. It was a more enjoyable era. Doesn't mean it was a better era in terms of the quality of football.
Well, it was just different football. It's not to say it was lesser quality. But
if you look at the points tallies, I think it's pretty clear that this year's title race, in terms of a 2-horse race, is a higher quality than we've ever seen.
Is that what points tallies means, or does that mean the rest of the division, immediately at the start of the season, put circles around the City game and the Liverpool game, went, well, we're going to rest players, or we're not going to put our best team for that, we're not going to game plan for those ones because we don't expect to get anything from them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I looked at the table from the last year that United won those back-to-back titles, and I think they finished on 90 points, which is it's 8 points off what that Man City team got yesterday. The big difference was the goals. United only scored 64 goals that season compared to Man City's 95. So, and I think the goals against United only conceded 1 more than City. So you can tell a story there. Like, obviously there wasn't big, huge hammerings in that season from United to other teams. Interestingly though as well, that was 08-09. I was remarking yesterday that was the first season Pep won the La Liga with Barcelona. That was 10 years ago. He won his first league title, and since then he's won 8 in 10 years. 3 in Spain, 3 in Germany, and 2 in England.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It is good. It's great. He was at Bayern Munich, and he has had all the money in the world to build them. It's hard to get too carried away with what Pep has done, because there's still that. He had Messi in the best team of all time at Barcelona, and then it's Bayern Munich, so everybody wins the league there all the time, and now he's had all the money in the world, coming to a team that was already a title contender.
I think you can separate them really. Look, definitely you have to talk about the money. You have to say that he's had every resource that he needs at that club, but then also look at some of the players that he's coached. Like Raheem Sterling has definitely improved vastly under Pep Guardiola. Aymeric Laporte, I think he's been a key man this season. I think he's maybe getting a little bit overlooked. Aymeric Laporte, I think, is part of that spine now. I think he is their key defender. He contributes both in a defensive point or defensive way and in an attacking way. Players do improve under Pep, albeit he has a lot of money.
He's a brilliant coach, absolutely, clearly a brilliant coach, and has left an imprint on football which will last forever, right? But it's hard to give him the same kind of credit that you would have given, say, Alex Ferguson or even Klopp in this instance, where Klopp has taken a Liverpool team who, by rights, could have been the 4th best team any year over the last 4 or 5 years, and everybody would have said, oh, they're now like a Champions League team year in, year out. But to do what they did this season is ridiculous.
Yeah, it was weird. Yes,
who's the manager of the year between these two?
It's a good question. It's
Jurgen Klopp is the manager of the year between the two of them. There's no question. He's got more out of his team than Pep Guardiola. I do think we're not comparing like with like. Guardiola, his skill set is working with the very elite and somehow been able to turn brilliant players. Remember, Raheem Sterling in 2014 was already a brilliant player. To turn him into a truly world-class player, to work them to the bones, to somehow get them playing in a system, what is in many ways it feels a quite rigid system, and a different system this year to last year, the amount of work he makes them do in the training ground, players who are on 300 grand a week and they don't moan, they just get on with it. The very elite of world football, and to bring another 10% out of them. Jurgen Klopp is slightly different. He makes very good players better. He makes Mo Salah a good striker into a great striker. He's starting them at a lower level. But Guardiola is probably the only manager in world football who I think can get a squad of such talented players and get them playing that attractive a style of football.
Yeah, it's funny. I've done 2 Man City games this season, Nathan, Huddersfield away and the game yesterday. And yesterday's game was a really impressive performance, and some of the football they played was good, but I admit I come away from those matches, those Man City games, just not feeling like a great love for the team, not feeling a great kind of passion for what they're doing. It's just like it's very impressive football, but I don't think it's that enjoyable.
Maybe it's where they are at this stage of the season. Like, I think back to the games against Chelsea and Arsenal a couple of months ago. The 6-0 against Chelsea was as good as I think I've ever seen of one team dominating another in the Premier League. The speed of play, Aguero's ability in front of goal. But what I do think I would go along with is the love, any love that might have been there for Guardiola and Manchester City is dwindling very quickly, and the backlash is coming next season. People are sick of them now. People are looking at them going, financial fair play, the best of everything. Who do these guys think they are? And have sort of grown used to the style of football. Last season, I think everyone enjoyed it because it was probably as good technically as we've ever seen in the Premier League. This season, we had a title race and 2 teams going at it week after week. And again, the games between them were unbelievably good. But now, if it's just Manchester City steamrolling everybody for a 3rd consecutive season, I think that love that maybe he thought was there, that was there for that Barcelona team, isn't going to be there. And it'll probably quite quickly into the season, I think you'll see people going for them. Unfortunately, not teams on the pitch, but certainly in the media, I think there'll be a bit of a reflection.
And who cares what?
Care.
Exactly. And who cares what happens when there'll be a bunch of columnists going, this is terrible, we should have done something about this. And it might be too late. So if Liverpool have a down season next year and there isn't a title race, then they'll win the league by 20 points. It'll be over by February, let's face it. And even if Liverpool have a slow start and finish by winning their last 30 games of the season, that might be too late. 90 points might be not even getting you into a title race next season. So I don't know. Everybody's better be careful about how good this. It was my point about the Man United fans. They definitely want Liverpool to win the league because Man City need to be stopped somewhere along the way. Man City are going to be here forever.
I'm not sure. Nathan was making the exact opposite point, really. Well, you didn't say it clearly, but the age profile you point out, Nathan. I mean, if somebody's going to kind of dwindle next year, are we sure Liverpool is the team out of these two that is going to happen to? I'm not so sure that's the case. I thought it was earlier in the year, but I think getting to 97 points in the way to sustain this, I thought they would tail off this season. They're still in the Champions League final. They went to the final day of the season. They got 97 points.
Yeah, but if Mo Salah gets
best goalkeeper in the league, he won the Golden Glove. They had 2 of the 3 Golden Boot winners yesterday.
How many significant injuries did they have this year? So Gomez got injured, but did anybody else get injured for any long period of time?
Gomez was a significant injury.
Yeah, and they managed to deal with it eventually. Trent Alexander-Arnold was out for a little while, and ultimately that seems to have cost them significantly. Anybody else?
The midfielders at different times had a few injuries. Obviously, Roberto Firmino's been injured at the end of the season, and Divock Origi has come in. I don't think, even though it sounds as though he's going to get a new contract, Origi will ever quite be at the level you want if Liverpool are to be one of the top 2. Maybe he's just a nice squad player and he's a good lad to have around the place. But it's just, you look at City, they can go out and they've all the money in the world, and none of those 4 players that are key players, and it's going to be hard to create another David Silva, but they can do it. They can go out and buy the next David Silva, where Liverpool are going to have to take chances. They're going to have to trust Klopp yet again that he can take a very good player and turn him into a great player. Whereas City, because of the money, are in that position and are going to stay in that position. But there is that slight question mark of, Sergio Aguero, what is it, 5 years in a row he scored over 20 goals. At some stage, that's going to have to stop. But maybe they sign Harry Kane.
What about the academy, though? Daniel Taylor did a great piece about 2 or 3 seasons ago about how Manchester City are hoovering up all the young talent in Manchester, that they've overtaken United as, the academy team where young players want to go. Where are they? Phil Foden's come through. And again, like he was taken out of the team
that's
pretty
academy
quickly.
football. That's academy football. Like Phil Foden will be the exception to the rule. The vast majority of them will end up going a Chelsea route and leaving the club. But here you get one or two, but they've got the same amount as Liverpool have got in a way.
But
like
this is the thing, they've had none, have they? They've had none. Where are all these players?
Well, I think it's too early yet, because that academy is like churning out its first under 23s now, and so maybe that first group didn't make it. But I think that actually that's another sign that there will be a bunch of good young players coming through, which will be a disaster for the rest of English football. So
I think Liverpool are around for the foreseeable.
Yeah, but I do too. Except that if something happens, they're more prone to a shock than Manchester City are. If Salah goes out and breaks a leg in the first day of the season, suddenly Divock Origi is your main replacement. What the hell happens then? Because he ain't going to score you 30 goals in all competitions next year. So if that happens, whereas if Aguero gets injured, they will find a way to replace him at Manchester City, and they will still win all the games that they that they won this year. Maybe just
it happened this season. Kevin De Bruyne missed pretty much the entire season for Manchester City. Their best player last season, their most technically gifted player, probably the key to everything Guardiola wants to do.
Well,
it didn't upset them.
Let's not forget the Fernandinho injury.
I was actually listening to a Man City podcast going over to the game yesterday, and there was 4 Man City fans sitting there talking about how Fernandinho was out, and they were saying, we don't have that ball-winning midfielder now with Fernandinho not in the team. You're kind of thinking, well, you don't need him. You're still winning games without Fernandinho on the side.
But except for when he was out at Christmas. And they really struggled without him at that point, and that was a real mark. Now, granted, Pep Guardiola has almost learned to cope. He learned from that period at Christmas where he realised that actually there was a solution to not having Fernandinho in your team. But at Christmas, let's not forget the takes were out there that Manchester City get one injury and it scuppers a supposedly deep squad. Like, we were having this conversation. Like, we're not just inventing this idea that Fernandinho's injury actually.
And that's who they replace this summer. That's so they signed somebody who will ultimately grow into be his replacement. So, but let's move on, because I want to play you this. A huge reaction to this ode to St. Pat's from Brian Kerr yesterday. Have a look.
Liverpool can finish off the season, I said, with the biggest trophy of all in football by beating Spurs, but they may not do it.
You would hope so, right? But I know you would. But
make no apologies for saying my team is St. Patrick's Athletic. Absolutely. I have never cried about Spurs losing a match. I have often cried about Pats losing, right? Lots of cup finals and sad days. But I've always had a bit of a feeling for Spurs. Spurs is a team, one of my teams. I've always had a team in every division. From when I was a kid, I had a team like Preston was my team. Doncaster was my team. They were playing today against Charlton. Scunthorpe I had, and I had Dunfermline, I had Ayr. I had a team in every division I used to, and I still maintain that. I look at every result. I look at every result in every league. Spurs happen to me, but I don't get upset, and I don't refer to them. I don't say we should do this or we should, like many supporters of English teams do. I'm not away. I'm not from North London. I'm from Drimnagh, and Pats was my nearest League of Ireland team, and it's still my team. So those of you that watch me on Twitter reacting to Spurs winning during the week, settle down. It was just a match. I was delighted about the outcome, delighted in the change of Spurs' fortunes on the night. It looked like it was gone, but if it was Pats in the league match, which it will be against your team, Boas, next Friday.
I hope you'll be crying
it might be with joy, it might be with pleasure, but it might be just seeing a great League of Ireland game between two respectful Dublin rivals, let's say.
Yeah, Nathan?
Yes. I'm still here. What's your point?
Yeah, just people there's been a backlash against the footage of various analysts, generally the studio analysts, celebrating goals. What's your take? You've got a take.
I think it maybe at times puts them in a unfair position in that suddenly Brian Kerr's a Tottenham fan. Can he correctly analyse them? Is he going to be totally biased? Is he going to be sitting in the Virgin studio for the Champions League final and talking about Spurs in a way that's not actually correct because somehow he's emotionally tied to them? That is not going to happen. I don't mind it in that I think it shows that they still care about the game, that they get as excited as everybody else about the game. There's nobody who wasn't watching on Tuesday night Liverpool and Tottenham on Wednesday night that was sitting in their seat. Everybody was off it. Everybody was up near the TV. Everybody's almost rolling around the place because of the drama of what's unfolding. And for fellas to be in their 50s, 60s and still to get as excited and as involved, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that. At times, if it turns into, look at the Manchester United supporter or the Liverpool supporter celebrating again, or if it was celebrating the misfortune of another team. So if Tottenham end up getting beaten or Liverpool get beaten, and you have all the former Manchester United players celebrating it, doesn't really reflect well. But like Neville and Carragher, I think now handle it in a decent way. It's probably works because the two of them haven't been in a position of strength at the same time. So it's hard for Gary Neville to be hugely positive about Manchester United. But I guess during that run, he was.
Yeah,
for under Solskjaer.
Remember that? What was the famous line about Garth Crooks and Sven-Goran Eriksson the first time that the BBC have ever shown two men having sex? It was the whole world got to see two men having sex when Gary Neville interviewed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Just let that hang there for a little while. I guess it's different in Ireland as well. Like Neville and Carragher are such legends of their club, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sky actively encouraged it, because Liverpool and Manchester United are the two best supporting clubs. Yeah. So if you're getting the interaction, if Gary Neville says this, all the Liverpool supporters respond. If Jimmy Carragher says this, all the United supporters have a go at him. And I can't imagine editors are too upset. And I can't imagine anybody out in Virgin is too upset that this clip of Brian Kerr was watched God knows how many hundreds of thousands of times.
Yeah, it came up in the
show business, baby.
It came up in the pay-per-view yesterday, though, and Ron Nugent had an interesting take on it. We'll play that a little bit later on. There's one last thing I wanted
I saw that, and the one thing on that, I guess, is that and I presume they all have to know now, if the pundits don't know they're being recorded, if they think we can sit in studio and be natural, and suddenly, like as you say, it happens so often now, it's probably going to go wrong at some stage, that someone will celebrate a goal or do something or something will happen that they don't want broadcast, and by the time you come off air, it's there.
I think
I haven't spoken to Brian, but there was obviously a lot of beeps and a lot of cursing while that game was going on. Like at times, like that's private stuff that people generally don't want made public.
And as well, I think with Brian is that like it's one thing watching Rio Ferdinand and whoever it is in BT Sports screaming their heads off and but I think it's just with Brian Kerr, what made the Brian Kerr thing so good was that there was so many Dublinisms in there, you little Dixie and all that, and I think Irish people can identify with what Brian was saying during that game. And look, we all get into this because we have a passion for football or whatever sport it is. That's what you're in it for, and that's how you start off in the business, whether it's becoming an athlete or a journalist or whatever the case may be. And you want people analysing the game who have a passion for the game. You don't want people who are trying to, dissect it coldly. There is a time for that, but when there are great moments like that, as we had during this week, you want people expressing their passion for the game. That's what you want to see. Now, as I said, maybe the BT thing is getting a little bit too much now because we're just seeing the same thing over and over again. The Brian Kerr thing was unique because it was Brian Kerr.
I think it's also because the games were good this week. If the games had been crappy 0-0 draws and there'd been a scratchy penalty and a VAR decision, none of this would have happened. But the bit where everything's being recorded, like, we all sit in a studio a lot with the mics down and say some stuff that we shouldn't say. Like... They're long hour shifts. The lads are out 3.5, 4 hours before kickoff. They're in makeup. They're relaxed. They're not relaxed. They're on. They're off. It's a recipe for disaster, is basically what I'm saying in a shorthand way. Nathan, every year the most important award in football is the one that you hand out, that you personally invented. It is it wouldn't quite be a golden boot. It'd be a green boot.
We should get a green boot next year. We need to get this sponsored.
An emerald boot I've just had in my ear from Joseph.
Could we call them like, I don't know, the Cool King?
No.
Just said it's something catchy. It could.
Is that cool with a K?
Could work. No, whatever way you want, Steve.
We were doing so well. The green boot. Go on.
Well,
explain what it is.
Which Irish player scores the most goals in a Premier League season? Simple as that, Ger.
You've been keeping this record now. Easy. You've been keeping this record for at least 3 seasons.
I've been bored on this train journey after every final day of the season and had a quick look through this. Last season was the worst season in the goal scoring sense for Irish football ever. 11 goals the season before last. 2 goals was top scorer. This season, Ger, we had a massive improvement for Irish football. 23 goals for Irish players in the Premier League this
Floodgates
season.
have opened.
Shane Duffy and Shane Long scored 5 each.
That's great.
So, like the Golden Boot, it's basically being shared.
Ireland is now
exactly.
Ireland is now the equivalent of a Sadio Mane or Sergio Aguero, +1.
No, we got more goals. There's a bit of research I'll have to do. When was the last time Irish players scored more goals than the top scorer in the Premier League?
Yeah.
So we scored 23. They only scored 22. So there was actually a good spread of Duffy and Long got 5. Matt Doherty got 4. Kieran Clark got a couple. Seamus Coleman got a couple. Scotland, Michael Obafemi scored a goal somewhere along the way. But it's a far cry. I think the first season in the Premier League, there were 72 goals scored by Irish players. We're unfortunately never going to get back to that level again.
Troy Parrott. Troy Parrott might score 30 goals a season.
Troy Parrott's injury just came at the worst time because he might have got a game yesterday.
Yeah.
There's a good chance he would have got a game.
Absolutely.
And who knows? Anyway, there was no chance he was going to play. Probably isn't even registered. But yeah. All right, Nathan, you spoke with Matt Doherty. We're going to play that interview now. He stopped yesterday. He was in good form for a chat.
Yeah, he did. And he's always in pretty good form for a chat. He's very likeable, Matt Doherty. He's a good confidence, I find. He sort of looks at where he is and goes, you know what? Because I think of the manager he plays with has instilled this in him. I belong here. I belong at this level. Because he has so many talented players alongside him for the club team, I think he sort of trusts where he is and is very comfortable in this Premier League setting. One of these players that if he went to a different team, it mightn't be as straightforward, and probably is the case with Ireland, that it's not going to be as straightforward, because unfortunately at Ireland he doesn't have João Moutinho and Ruben Neves just inside him. But yeah, obviously I think Matt Doherty was the standout player from an Irish point of view this season.
James Coleman didn't play yesterday. Was he injured? Does anybody know?
No, off the top of my head now, to be honest.
They were away from home, weren't they? So I'd imagine that they probably just rested him at the end of the season. They had their send-off last week.
Yeah, he went 3 at the back, so he played wing-backs. He had Yerry Mina back in the team alongside Zuma and Michael Keane. So unless it was something to do with that, I suppose, look, it's the last game of the season. They didn't need the result. Maybe he's looking ahead to next season. Here's a new formation I can try out. Maybe it could have been experimental.
Yeah.
Give Seamus a well-deserved day off.
All right. Speaking of well-deserved days off, Nathan, you're on your way home. Thanks very much for joining us this morning, and congratulations on putting down a great Premier League season. And congratulations to you, Steve-O, for making your debut this season.
Thanks, Ger.
Game of the year for you. What was yours?
Game of the year that I did.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose probably watching Huddersfield against Man U last week. It was just, when you see a team that's already relegated putting in a performance like that against Manchester United was just incredible.
Turns out Cardiff said, "Hold my beer." And what about you, Nathan?
Same as last season, Liverpool, Manchester City, except this year was the flip. It was at the Etihad. The 2-1 was the highest quality game I've ever seen in the Premier League. The speed of it, the ability of the players to somehow control a ball when everything's going at 110 miles an hour. And in fact, it was the sort of game that made you rethink what you thought about English football, as to say that it is the best league in the world right now. They are the best 2 teams in Europe right now. And even coming away from it going, you know what, rather than getting on these Irish players all the time while we don't have enough of them in the Premier League, saying, bloody hell, the guys that are there who are playing week in, week out, the 15 or so of them that get a game, the level they have to get to be able to play in that league, what Coleman and Doherty and Duffy are doing, we never fully appreciate it. We never say that these guys are our finest athletes that are coming out of this country. But you look at the talent that's available in the Premier League, for them to be there, and just even watching a game like City and Liverpool, that they get to play on that pitch against those players and can hold their own. Matt Doherty yesterday, John Walters touched on it afterwards, was probably the best player on the pitch for a large chunk of that game against this Liverpool team. He was that good. So Liverpool City, and hopefully once again Liverpool City gets to that standard next season.
Sorry, recency bias. Spurs Arsenal, my first game actually. That was. How could I forget it? 4-2.
Come on.
As I was actually going over on the plane that day, and I was kind of going, "Oh, first game to commentate on. What am I going to do when it goes quiet? What am I going to try and get Gary Breen to talk?" Well, I didn't have to worry because there was goals every couple of minutes. 4-2. It was incredible. Yeah.
Nice one. All right, lads. Good stuff. Thanks a million for it. Here is Matt Doherty, obviously the Irish breakout star of the Premier League season. Even if he can't get in the Irish team, chat with Nathan yesterday.
Has it got easier as the season has gone on? Do you feel a lot more comfortable at this level?
I feel more comfortable. Obviously, I wouldn't say it's got easier. We've just kind of got better as the season's gone on. And it's like anything, the more you do it, you get used to the kind of level a bit more. You become a little bit more experienced, so you kind of work things out for yourself maybe a bit quicker. It's definitely not got easier. Every game is incredibly tough. But I have become more comfortable, but not to the point where you think it's easy. You still know you have to have full concentration for the whole game. So it's been a great first season. I'm sure next season will be totally different. Teams will try. I've seen us play now, so they know what we're like. So they might try and stop us different ways. But again, like we've had that first year experience, so we could be even better next season also.
Can you believe how well it's gone for you to have played a part in every single league game, to get to a cup semi-final, to have an influence in a cup semi-final, to score all the goals you've scored? I know you say you haven't had time, you have to stop and pause, but bloody hell, it's gone well.
Yeah, look, I know that it's gone really well. I'm not going to sit here and say, I expected everything to happen the way it has. I know that things have kind of fallen into place for me this season, and everything I've done has almost come off. So yeah, look, I've had a great season, and what I got to do now is obviously go away on international in the summer and make sure that I come back in pre-season and replicate it next season, not just be a kind of one-off season.
Yeah, hopefully it isn't a one-season wonder. And Matt Doherty, because they play wing-backs, you're saying, we keep having this conversation, but every week he gets better and better, and he gets higher up the food chain in terms of right-backs. There's a load of teams that could do with a right-back. Can he play 4-4-2? Can he?
I think he could, yeah.
Yeah.
He could play as a winger. I know Mick tried it against Gibraltar, but
I mean,
he needed that win against Georgia.
The Gibraltar was like, we can't draw any conclusions from this game except that guy can't play there.
Exactly.
The wind was terrible. We were awful. It was all the wind's fault, but that guy, he stunk the joint out so badly, we're never playing him there again.
And EasyJet plane almost dispossessed him at one point. It was a ridiculous evening.
There's a lot of things going on that day.
Where are you starting today?
Well, only one place to start. Curtain has come down on the most relentless Premier League title race we've ever seen. Manchester City finished top of the pile, 98 points after closing out the season with 14 league wins in a row. And they got those 14 wins after that 2-1 defeat to Newcastle at the end of January. So when Brighton went ahead yesterday, that was the first time since the Newcastle game that they were behind in the league. And 32 wins from 38 games, that's 2 seasons in a row they've done that. So that is what it's going to take to beat Manchester City. You're going to have to
win 33 games.
Liverpool got 30 wins, but they drew one too many. They obviously won their last 9, but finished a point behind City. Merseyside derby on March the 3rd. At Goodison Park was the last time City or Liverpool dropped points.
Yeah,
that was actually the day that it now went into City's hands.
So Everton was the main contributor to Liverpool not winning the Premier League title.
You could look at the game,
the last significant moment.
Yeah, but you'd look at the Merseyside derby and the 0-0 draw at Old Trafford. When you consider United kept 2 clean sheets in the league all season, and one of those was against Liverpool. Firmino came off in that game. They brought on Sturridge for some reason. He didn't start Trent Alexander-Arnold. So if you're Jurgen Klopp, you're looking at next season thinking, I just need backup in attack. I think defensively they're fine. Midfield, maybe one more midfielder, a bit of creativity, but they're going to have Oxlade-Chamberlain for the season. You got to have backup, better backup than Divock Origi or Daniel Sturridge. Sturridge will be gone. Shaqiri is hit and miss. So maybe 2 attackers. Interesting to see how good Ryan Brewster really is. He showed at the Under-17 World Cup. He's a serious talent, so maybe he could be a game changer.
Next season, though, is that not a little?
He's certainly he could become an option off the bench, and that's something Liverpool didn't really have enough of. Origi has become a bit of a cult hero, but he's not really good enough.
Cash in.
Yeah.
Cash in on that status that he currently has, this little run of form, get somebody to pay whatever is ridiculous. Get Jordan Ibe money, whatever that was.
Bournemouth paid 20 million for Dominic Solanke, so Origi could be worth 40 million.
Is there a chance that the they become like the Manchester United of yesteryear, and I speak about Manchester United of yesteryear from an Arsenal perspective, as in just plucking the top talent from around them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about this perceived top six versus the rest. Liverpool are now, given the stature of their season, capable of actually going to Chelsea or to an Arsenal and saying, here's 50 million for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, here's 150 million for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang.
Too old. Aubameyang's 30 this season. But Christian Eriksen, I like your logic and apply to Christian Eriksen and see what happens.
Capitalise on the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, well, it looks like it's going to be between those two. And for 83 seconds, the dream was alive for Liverpool. They were 1-0 up thanks to Sadio Mane's goal in their 2-0 win over Wolves. Brighton went 1-0 up on Manchester City, but Sergio Aguero equalised 83 seconds later, and then Aymeric Laporte put them 2-1 up before half-time. Riyad Mahrez and Ilkay Gundogan sealed the win in the second half. So with the league title and League Cup in the bag, City could win a domestic treble next week when they face Watford in the FA Cup final. City captain Vincent Kompany has been there for all 4 Premier League title wins.
We did it, and we did it as well against one of the best teams the Premier League has ever known. So I'm proud to be a part of this team, proud to have led this team to success, and I want more.
For Liverpool, attention turns to the Champions League final against Tottenham on the 1st of June. After yesterday's game, Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp says his team couldn't have done any more.
When your opponent is City, then it's difficult. I think it was for them difficult to get rid of us, and we couldn't get rid of them. But with the season, I'm completely fine. With the points that I'm completely fine.
Chelsea and Tottenham ended up in 3rd and 4th following draws against Leicester and Everton. Manchester United season finished in further disappointment. A 2-0 defeat to Cardiff at Old Trafford, and Paul Pogba had a few words with some of the fans after that game as well. Tipperary and Kerr both won away from home on the opening day of the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. Tip beat Cork by 228 to 124. Seamus Callanan and John McGrath scored the goals for Tip before Seamus Harnedy bagged the late goal for the Rebels. Tip manager Liam Sheedy was naturally delighted with the win.
No, I like what I see. They've been a great bunch to train, and they're being pushed. They're being pushed every night. You know, there's a younger brigade coming up that are winners, and they're mad to get their time in there as well. But we pick on form, and as I said, we're a very, very competitive panel, and that result today was more about the strength of our panel than it was for just about the lads that took the 20 lads that took the pitch. But look, overall, we're delighted to have got the win, and now we, as I said, our mind shift to next weekend. And you know, there's no resting on your arms around here, but delighted to have come out of Cork with a victory.
Yeah, Tip play Waterford next week, and Waterford were beaten by Clare yesterday. The Banner winning by 120 to 22 points at Walsh Park. John Quinlan scored an early goal for the Banner. Remember, Clare suffered a heavy defeat to Waterford in the league, but Clare defender David Fitzgerald knew that would have no bearing on yesterday's match.
Everyone knows the league is a completely different animal. Like, you're coming down here today, the tires melting, the cookies are singing, like, and coming down here to get a win, you know, it's a different ball game. So it was a massive win for us.
Wow.
What did he say? The cookies are singing?
Cookies.
Oh,
Tara's melting is a great one, though.
Yeah.
The sun was out yesterday. It kind of did signal the start of the summer, the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. And the other game next week, Limerick and Cork. Pressure already on Cork, playing the All-Ireland champions at the Gaelic grounds. Elsewhere yesterday, Galway got the better of Carlow by 124 to 118 in the Leinster Hurling Championship. In the first round of the Leinster Football Championship, a Brian McMahon goal 7 minutes from time saw Meath beat Offaly by 113 to 14 points. Louth saw Wexford by 22 points to 114. Roscommon are safely into the semi-finals of the Connacht Championship after a 317 to 12 points win over Leitrim, and Tyrone advanced in the Ulster Championship with a 119 to 113 win over Derry. Finally, Porrick Harrington finished in a share of 12th place at the Byron Nelson Championship in Texas. The European Ryder Cup captain ended up in 15 under, 8 behind the winner, Sung Kang.
That's not bad at all. Good stuff for that, Phil. Thanks very much. Alan Quinlan is on standby. Here's Leinster boss Leo Cullen reacting to his side's Champions Cup final defeat.
We're very gutted now that we couldn't just do that a little bit better, I think, today. And we definitely had some chances, went into a 10-0 lead, couldn't quite nail home that advantage when Itoje was in the bin. And started the second half, we had some more chances again, couldn't quite finish them, and then once Sarries get their nose in front, they're a hard team to slow down.
I appreciate one moment doesn't decide a game, but the swing in momentum when perhaps you had the opportunity to kill the game in the first 40 minutes, is that something you have to reflect upon?
There's so many different parts to the game, so everyone will talk about the period either side of half time. One, probably from a defensive point of view, trying to manage that period so we go into half time with our nose in front. Then the second half, where we have some chance as well. So probably hinge on those moments of the game. But there's lots of other parts to it as well. We know it's difficult when Sarries have a lead, because we've seen it on numerous occasions where they just really strangle teams, and you can see how strong they were defensively. They've a huge team. And ultimately we couldn't break them down in the second half. Two very, very good teams, two very, very strong teams. So you could see both teams fully committed to their causes of their teams. We're, as I said, it was a great day for us pulling up. We're just gutted that we couldn't get a more positive outcome.
Was that probably what made it trickier as well? You have the game being strangled, the fact that when you're trying to chase it, your energy levels were going to be low after that try went over.
Yeah, no, definitely. We as I said, we had some chances to build on that lead that we had early in the game. Couldn't quite nail them. And at this level, a team like Saracens is going to make you pay, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's Leo Cullen speaking after the Heineken Champions Cup final defeat to Saracens with our reporter Will O'Callaghan in the aftermath of the game. Alan, he was fairly philosophical. Saracens are a brilliant team. This is their third title in 4 seasons. They're the best team of the last decade. We're at a level here where you need to be perfect to beat Saracens, and Leinster just weren't perfect.
Yeah, they weren't. I think they started the game really well, and they imposed themselves, and they held on to the ball pretty good. But you just think some of the key decisions, before half-time, after half-time was a crucial area. And we always say that in sport, you go in it, how you feel running off that field at half-time can impact what happens in the second half. And the whole mentality and the feel-good factor in the dressing room. And Sarries ran off that field thinking, we've been battered here at times. We've had 2 props gone off injured. We'd have one of our players in the sin bin. We've been 10-0 down, and now it's 10-all.
Yeah.
We're going to regroup here and dust ourselves off, and then we're going to go out and start playing, and we'll win the second half. And they have a strong mentality, to be fair. They're a very powerful side. And I just think Leinster were a little bit shell-shocked, and I think they needed to start well in the second half, maybe just knock over a penalty to make it 13-10, play in the right areas. And they had a great opportunity with Gary Ringrose. He cuts back inside. They had another one with, I think it was Tyke Furlong, trying to get the pass away. So they had 2 kind of try-scoring opportunities. The one with Gary Ringrose, there was 4 guys outside him. There was 2, so it could have been actually a 4-on-1. Now, the scramble defence, there was no guarantee that it would, but it looked like an 80-20 scenario for a try. And if Leinster went 17-10 there, you'd say, right, we can wipe off the try before half-time. That's done and dusted. We're now 17-10 up. Big statement second half. Here we go again. And coincidentally, it was Jackson Ray's break kind of from midfield. Someone missed a tackle in the back line off phase play that led to the Sarries try, which put them 20-10 up, and Scott Fardy in the bin. And you just felt after that try, then it was gone. 10 points. They have so much power. They can see out a game. They're cynical. They're aggressive. They're physical. Well, I think Leinster look back at the game, and some of the decisions that we associated with them last year, really clinical, good game management. A couple of areas didn't work for them on Saturday.
In chatting off air, you were saying you felt that maybe Leinster could have kicked to the corners a bit more and played possession.
Yeah, I thought they would have played. And look, to be fair to Johnny Sexton, you can't, he's been through so much, achieved so much. And he said it afterwards that, Luke McGrath had an opportunity to kick the ball out. The clock was in the red. It was 10-3. We all see it. Everybody's on the sideline. It's different when you're out there. You're kind of in the adrenaline of it.
And so at that stage, it felt like if this goes 17-3, it's curtains.
But I did the one before half-time when Luke could have kicked it out. And they could have just went right 10-3 at half-time. They played, and Sexton said afterwards, look, they tried to keep going and play and get another score, and they kicked it. They box-kicked it on Billy Vunifola. It didn't work. Saracens came up the field and got the try 3 minutes into injury time. I just thought that was one decision that didn't work for them. They try to actually at times, and look, you've got to make the hard yards with your ball carriers, but too often, and it doesn't happen. Leinster, they got stopped on the gain line and actually back on their own side, which didn't really suit them. And then they're trying to play because they have this mentality of ambition to play, which is unbelievable, to be fair to them. But it's hard, and when you're not used to, and it's similar to the Ireland-England game in Dublin. We try to overplay at times, and that's what Sarries do. So when I say kick, not aimlessly kick, play a phase or two, but just try and put it in over the wingers a little bit, play for a little bit of territory, and in the end, the inner energy was kind of gone out of their legs.
The collisions was the other thing that maybe helped to suck the energy out of their legs. You were seeing some stats that showed that Leinster were vastly behind in terms of the...
It was the gain line success and the force of those collisions. Like I said, you know, you're running into Will Skelton, who's 125 kilos, and he's not actually killing you with a tackle, but he's actually stopping you dead, picking you up and putting you back 2-3 yards over the gain line. It's hard then to resource that. They're getting a flat defensive line, then they're shooting out of the line. You saw their second row, Cruz, hit Sexton twice coming out of the line. You can only do that if the collisions beforehand are dominant. So they kind of wait their moments, and to be fair to them, that's why they're such a good side.
So that's not just a function of size, that's a function of scheme as well?
Well, the size around Atoje, Cruz, Skelton, two Vunipolos, they're hard guys. You run straight at them, the chances are it'll be a collision right on the gain line, and you'll do well to win that gain line unless you put a bit of footwork on it. But if you're putting guys back over the gain line, that's a bit slow. Their numbers on their feet, you're able to charge forward all the time. I thought there was times there where Leinster should have just pinged the ball down the field, play a bit of kick tennis, and you know, even though Leinster kept recycling the ball and they kept getting back around and winning those rucks behind the gain line, it was taking a bit out of their legs. And the last 15 minutes then, the impact off the bench from Saracens was much stronger.
Yeah.
So because Leinster was chasing the game, if Leinster were ahead, they're an incredibly tenacious and resilient side who can weather any sort of a storm. And they did that at times in the first half when Sarries threw the kitchen sink at them and they come up with a turnover and they defend brilliantly. But chasing the game is hard against a side like Saracens.
Andy Dunn mentioned that Irish rugby needs to abandon box kicking.
It's not just Irish rugby on. It's everyone. Saracens kicked the leather off it with these box kicks as well. Is
it just basically a bad idea?
You go back to England, France in Twickenham. England kicked the ball 44 or 5 times in that game. They scored 6 or 7 tries. Everyone left Twickenham that day, and I said this: wow, what a performance! England were amazing. They played brilliantly. And then you look back at the stats and you see the amount of kicks that they put in.
Specifically box kicking, like they went a bit longer against France, didn't they?
They did, but they still box kicked a lot. The frustration for people is around the box kicking is the way it slowed down. There was a match there a few weeks ago, Joe Marler, was it against Harlequins against, was it Exeter?
Come on now, you're boring me, that one.
Yeah, with a bit of bad language, but like that's the way it is. It's 3, 4, 5 seconds, and it's triple banking, quadruple banking at the back of the ruck, guys hugging on, making the ruck longer. Look, it's fine for us on the sideline to say that this is a tactic they're using to get a bit of stability, to get set, to get the kick chase and all that stuff. If you do it really quickly, you'll be a bit disjointed on the kick chase, but the game is being slowed down a lot and by those box kicks, and Leinster actually kicked more from the box kicks, but you've got to do that at times. Defensively, you've got to slow things down if you're in your own 22, but we see a lot of it where there's a chance to play and the scrum half goes no and he starts calling guys in. A lot of teams are doing that.
Yeah.
It's a real trend in the game now, and it's very frustrating to watch. It's a real negative thing. They're trying to find ways, even if it's negative, to win matches and just keep it simple at times, and that's fine if you're leading and you want to frustrate the opposition, because it does drive the opposition mad if you slow it down and you get organised and the kick chase is really aggressive. But the other thing that's a glaring problem in rugby is the offside lines.
Sexton mentioned it.
I just cannot believe how this stuff has not been picked up more. It's happening in every match. Leinster were doing it, Saracens were doing it, the side entries and the breakdowns. Guys halfway up the side of rucks.
Explain what impact that has on the quality of the match then, because that's the main thing.
So if you have a ruck and the gain line there's a line across the field and it's a gain line, if you have guys standing over that, they're obviously going to get to the attack quicker. If they have to go back a yard and they can't sprint off this line really quickly, well, that gives the opposition a chance to play and put it through the hands, and maybe we will see a bit more attacking rugby rather than all these collisions around the breakdown. Plus, if I'm coming around the breakdown...
Is it hard to referee? Is that the issue?
Very hard. Look, Matt Williams said it on Virgin Media the other day, and he said it before, and I agree with him. A second referee could help this scenario, policing the breakdown. Now, sometimes the referees get in the way, but the assistant referees, they do help and they do call at times, but not as much. Now, it's very, very difficult. It's great for me. I'm above in the stand on the top tier and I'm looking down doing the commentary, and I can see, like, as the ball is being passed, they're halfway up the ruck. And it just means that even off the one-out carriers, Ger, those guys then are coming around, because as they're getting the ball, the defence is right on top of them. Yeah. So it's collision. So if that defence is back a yard or two and they can't sprint off the line, I can now, even if there's a flat line, a load of numbers there, I can now pick a target. I can maybe try and go between two defenders. I can put a bit of evasion on. I think it's something that really needs to change a little bit. Some people said to me, and Shane Coleman said it on breakfast, and you know what, he's saying, look, I like rugby. If Leinster weren't playing the other day, I probably would have switched it off, because it wasn't a game that was attracting me to brilliant rugby. Now, sometimes the weather plays a part in the Northern Hemisphere, but I just think at times...
They were perfect conditions for a good game.
Perfect conditions.
And they're the two best teams of the last decade.
Yeah, and they were. And look, sometimes in football and hurling and other sports, good teams cancel each other out. Yeah. That's fine. But in
terms of the offside, the NFL obviously have the imaginary line in the pitch, which is the down marker for the first down marker. So you've got to get over that line to get your new set of downs. If we were to start drawing this imaginary line on TV of where the offside line is, then everybody would begin to see at home, that's offside,
see what's happening. And you know what? It's not just to the quality of the rugby, but to the player welfare, these impacts, the concussions, which is massive. Yeah. The attritional side of it, the knocks, the physicality. Like at the end of the game the other day, it just went totally out the window, the offside line. Leinster were trying to run out of their own 22. Saracens were just... it was phenomenal how offside they were at times. And they were dead right. I do the exact same thing.
When it's not getting caught.
Closing out a game. And Sexton got hit 2 or 3 times, and this actually could prevent some of the injuries and the impacts as well. And I'm not saying Saracens. Leinster were offside a good bit as well. It's happening across the board.
I want to ask you a little bit about what happens next for Leinster, because I looked up the team for last year's Champions Cup final, and it's basically the same team. Easton Asewa started at 11, but otherwise the backline was exactly the same, and the forwards were almost exactly the same, except Dan Levy was 7 and Jordy Murphy was 8. Obviously Jordy Murphy's gone and Dan Levy's had that awful injury, so it's the same group of players that has brought them to 2 Champions League finals in a row. But we think Rob Kearney is going. Sean O'Brien was telling everybody on his Instagram stories that Rob Kearney's off to France, so it's either France or Japan depending on what you hear. He's gone. Jack McGrath is gone. And after that, obviously, Joey Carby was on the bench there, and Sean O'Brien has gone too. So it will be a different team, and they won't have anything like the strength and depth. That embarrassment of riches that everybody talked about, that was the last time they had that embarrassment of riches, was a year ago.
Yeah, but they still have some really good young players. Scott Penny is someone who was brilliant for the Irish under-20s, really good player. Caelan Doris, another good, brilliant player. And Max Deegan is someone that can step up. There's still, a lot of good young backs as well in the group. I think what Saracens showed us the other day is the power. And if you need, sometimes maybe you need one or two of these big powerful guys. If you go back 12 months ago again, when Leinster dominated Saracens in the AV, but 2 of Vunipola brothers were missing. Yeah. And they're that unique kind of guys, to be fair. There's not every team has these, because Cruz made 28 tackles the other day. He's just a workhorse. He's physical. Skelton is just a monster. Itoje, Vunipola, Jackson Ray is a massive number 7. He's 6'2".
James Ryan will fill out as time goes on.
Yeah, but even James Ryan the other day, for all the brilliant carries and the incredible work rate that he has, he had to hunch down an awful lot, because that impact and that double team tackle was coming every time. So credit to him for that. But it's not panic buttons for Leinster. It's an incredible achievement, Ger, to get back to a final again. They're very, very difficult to win. They're attritional throughout the year. You need a little bit of luck. If you go back to the start of the season when they beat Wasps in the first game, people were comparing them, saying they could beat the All Blacks. So there's not a lot wrong. I think fine margins the other day against an incredible side. And you got to say, in the end, it had that feel when you left that the best side won.
Yeah.
But you also had the feeling that those couple of incidents in the game could have been so much different. Before halftime, after halftime, crucial parts of in any sport. So dusting themselves down now, getting ready for Munster at the weekend is tricky. Last year, you think they win in Bilbao, you have a few drinks for the 2 days, you relax, you probably don't train much that week, and it's just so much easier to switch on and go, let's go again, because you feel great about yourself. All the sacrifices, all the training all year, it just kicks into gear and say one more shove, one more push, and that's what they did. And Leo made a number of changes for that game in Dublin, that semi-final. It's a bit different from this time because you're bruised and battered physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And Leinster
lying there awake, going, this is perfect.
Yeah, Munster will be, and given the bit of negativity in the last few weeks after their game against Benetton, coaches leaving, bit of criticism from the outside, they'll be desperate to salvage something, and there's an opportunity for them. So it's a really intriguing one, that one on Saturday.
I'd make Munster slight favourites at this point, just by virtue of the week.
He's at it again. Yeah, he's at it again. He's talking us up.
He was delighted. Off air, he was like, this is a perfect situation for
Well,
Munster.
it is, but like, I wonder, Alan, is there kind of you almost want to be going up against a fully tuned Leinster side, because first of all, it'll give you a greater satisfaction if they win, or else you wouldn't get any false hope or any papering over the cracks.
If I was a player, I wouldn't care less. It's about just getting the result on Saturday. If Munster were to win, people would say because Leinster were bruised, battered, injuries, psychologically, they take away from it. If Leinster win with those situations and conditions, it shows that the gap is still there, and there is a gap. Munster have to produce an intensity that they did in Thomond Park and at Christmas, and there will be a real desperation about it. And what it makes for a great game. Leinster are not a bad side now, you know what I mean?
No, they're not, but it's hard to get back up.
And they probably need to, readjust and bring in a few guys and improve again.
Yeah, so the point is they're not going to bring anybody in. That's apparently the story, is that they're going to, what they have, they hold, and it will be younger players coming through as opposed to big marquee signings. Every year there's been one or two players that they would have added, and you kind of felt like that squad was growing, but it's been a net negative in terms of the players leaving, I would suggest, over the next while. So we'll see what happens with that. Munster are 8-point underdogs. That's ridiculous for this game. It's a one-score game, and no one is surprised if Munster are standing over the bloody corpse of Leinster at the end of that game next week.
Yeah, but they'll be battered and angry, Leinster, and I think, look, they're at home. It'll be a tight one for sure, but I think I go back to that semi-final last year. Munster had opportunities in that game to maybe score, and if you don't take them, well, you're making it very difficult for yourself. So if they go to Dublin on Saturday, you got to take your chances. Munster might get one or two chances. If they get a good start to the game, they might ask a few questions, but we'll wait and see what the teams are later in the week. But it's still, for me, I don't think it's as ridiculous as you're making it out to be.
8 points is too much. It's a 3-point game, I'm telling you. Right. You might be interested in this next bit. We're talking about how great Tipperary were against Cork at the weekend. That's coming up with Dennis Walsh in 1 second. Before that, though, Irish goalkeeper Mark Travers had a bit of a difficult day at the office for Bournemouth yesterday. Crystal Palace scored 5. He was man of the match, remember, and kept a clean sheet in his debut a couple of weeks ago. Here he is talking with our own Enda Call about his own plans for next season. Have a look.
Mark, that's obviously a disappointing way to end the season, but you must be delighted to have broken into the side.
Definitely very disappointed end to the season, as you said, ups and downs of football. Good week last week, but disappointing this week. But it's good to get 2 first team Premier League games under my belt, and I'll take for it and learn from it and try and build on it next season.
What did Eddie Howe say to you after the Tottenham game?
Obviously he was just delighted for me and my family that it went well, so just keep trained well last week, and see what happens for the weekend.
So obviously next year you want to push on and get into the first team. Has Eddie said anything about that next year?
No, just obviously play the last 2 games, see what happens now in pre-season. That's obviously the goal, try and push in and get as many games you want with AFC Bournemouth, but if not, see what happens.
And what would be the best thing about the last 2 games? Is just getting the Premier League experience in?
Yeah, definitely. Getting the last 2 games, Premier League football was unbelievable. I felt I always could play in it. Obviously a massive learning curve today with the result, but hopefully there's a few more to come.
And Ireland obviously has a long list of goalkeepers in the Premier League, the likes of Shea Given. Is that what you want to aspire to be one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League?
Of course, yeah, you got to set your standards as high as possible. This is where I want to play week in, week out. Just going to keep working hard and hopefully it comes.
How do you get there, do you think?
Sorry?
How are you going to get there?
Just keep working. 6 weeks, well, not even off season, away with the Ireland team. So after that, get a few weeks rest and then try and build on it pre-season.
Do you have any hopes of getting into the Ireland national team now?
Obviously Darren Randolph has done really well. Kieran Hara is in there as well. So I'm just going to see what happens. Training camp in Portugal first, and hopefully that goes well.
Asmir Begovic apparently had a big row with Eddie Howe and is now for sale. So we'll see what happens. He may well be a starting goalkeeper in the Premier League next year. Best of luck to him. Hopefully he enjoys that bit of the off-season. Let's move on because it is time for us to talk about a really interesting weekend in the hurling championship. Reports of the demise of the Tipperary hurlers have been greatly exaggerated. I'm delighted to say Dennis Walsh of the Sunday Times is with us this morning to talk about this. An incredible performance from Tip, really, in that everything that we thought Tipperary could be was exactly what they were. And it's not that it came out of nowhere, but it certainly, you couldn't have guessed from the league campaign really that they were going to put in a performance of such guile, physicality and accuracy. Dennis, it was sensational stuff from them, really.
Yeah, it was, and as you said, they were terrific, and it was hard to read the signs, Ger. I mean, even going back further than that, I think I saw a stat somewhere at the weekend that they've won just 3 of the last 12 league and championship games. You know, like they finished outside the top 3 last year in Munster, and you know, despite all the talk about defined margins last year, I mean, there was really a feeling that Tip were in recession. And then when they didn't go for the young lads that won the All-Ireland last year, on 21, I mean, they basically ignored that team. You know, Jake Morris came off the bench. People thought he might start, and so they kind of went for a whole lot of greatest hits from the last 10 years. You know, it was almost like kind of a team of the decade selection. All their best players from the last number of years found their form again. You know, as you say, it was terrific. They were well worth their win, and you know, it could easily have been more, to be honest.
I think John O'Dwyer is kind of the perfect example of somebody who. So we know about his qualities as a hurler, but he looked lithe and he looked like he was as fast as he's ever looked yesterday. And obviously, the new management setup has come in and identified the issues that the team and individuals have had over the last number of years, and has immediately rekindled the bond with them that they had when they were winning All Irelands together.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with, as you say, or as you implied, the issue with John O'Dwyer would have been his fitness and his work rate. And, you know, he had fallen out of favour with Michael Ryan on occasions over the last couple of years. It looked like he was going to be a bit of a waste of talent. I mean, everyone knows what an incredibly skillful player he is. But it just looked like he wasn't going to fulfil that promise. Playing him at the forward yesterday was, I imagine, was a curveball that Cork weren't expecting. But he was terrific, and obviously Cork had a rookie number 6 starting his first game in that position in the championship, and you know, he was very nervous. You could see that he missed a few balls early on, and he just couldn't get his hands at all on John Dwyer. And I mean, his accuracy was incredible. I mean, his first wide actually was from a free after Jason Ford went off. He had 5 shots at the post before that, and 5 of them went over. So yeah, I mean, he's a terrific player, and to have him playing as well as that, you know, gives them. And I mean, they have other options at centre forward, but I mean, you know, the way he played yesterday, I can't imagine that they'll think twice about playing him there again the next day.
And Seamus Callanan also back looking fit and healthy again, and you know, not as devastating as he can be himself as an individual, but also just chipping in with I think it was a goal in 3 or a goal in 4. You know, it's not bad to have Callan not be the main player in your forward line.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you say, Faith again. I mean, he's missed a lot of hurling over the last couple of years, especially during the winters, with injury, the back injury, especially, and you know, to have him, as you said, have him come looking so sharp, looking so lively. I mean, 2 years ago when Cork beat Tip in Thurles, Damien Callan really bottled him up, and he made no impression that day. But yesterday he was, you know, in fairness to the Cork full back line, this might sound crazy, but the Cork full back line actually did quite well because they were under savage pressure. There was no block on the ball coming in. The supply lines were open, left, right and centre. The Cork full back, Owen Cadigan, did as well as you could possibly expect under the kind of shelling that they were experiencing. But yeah, like Seamus Callan was really good in a forward line that was just humming. And I mean, look, it's you know, with Eamon O'Shea back on board, I think the best forward lines that they've produced in the last decade have been when Eamon O'Shea has been around. You know, he's an unbelievable coach of forward lines, and you could see that harmony and that fluency again yesterday.
There's no question, Dennis, that Tipperary have underachieved over the last 2 summers. I'm interested in to what extent have they underachieved, because if you want to get carried away with yesterday's performance, or even just look at the names on paper, if you look at all those names and pretend for a moment that they're all going to reach their peak or as close to their peak for the duration of this summer, there's a strong argument to be made that on paper Tipperary have the strongest team in the hurling championship. Yeah, I mean, I would feel that Limerick are still incredibly. I think Limerick are favourites for the All-Ireland and have every right to be. I had a quick look at the odds last night, and Tip now are just fractionally behind Limerick in the betting. And yeah, I mean, you're right. Only it is easy to get carried away. I mean, Cork weren't good yesterday. I mean, Cork would have struggled to beat any of the top teams yesterday the way they played. So I think let's wait and see. I mean, in this championship, the kind of data keeps coming. There's another game next Sunday. You'd imagine they'll beat Waterford and Thurles and then be in a very strong position. But I mean, like that half-back line on paper all the week looked extremely strong, and it played like that. I mean, Brendan Maher and Pádraig Maher are around since almost 10 years. I mean, Pádraig Maher played in 2009. Brendan Maher was playing back then as well. They were super yesterday. Rowan Maher is only a young guy. Like that half-back line on paper is apart from maybe the Dublin half-back line, the best half-back line in the championship in theory, and that's a huge platform for them. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about. Before that, is Eamon O'Shea back all the time? Because it kind of news sifted out that he was a consultant, and then is he at every training session? Do you know, or how? I'm not sure if he's there the whole time, Ger, but he's definitely there a fair bit of the time, you know. And like Christy O'Connor, I know, was talking to him recently, and the way he was talking, he was expecting a performance yesterday like that. Right, because anybody who ever has had the opportunity to listen to Eamon O'Shea talk about it, you know, he just thinks about space and the game completely differently. So, you know, and his big thing, is, and he's this lovely phrase of connecting, players connecting, and you could see that yesterday, the way they moved the ball, you know, the way that they found their men, like they scored, you know, 224 from play. That's extraordinary. You know, and you know they weren't completely efficient in their use of possession. But to score 228 in a game like that, and so much from play, you know, it's a reflection of their firepower. Anthony Nash made a brilliant save from a penalty that no one's ever going to talk about, because he ends up on the side who ultimately end up feeling a bit like they got hammered as well. So it could have been much worse. Let's talk a little bit about Cork, because certainly a lot of the talk had been Cork's league campaign was about making sure that they were ready for this championship, and that this was going to finally be the year that they fulfilled the potential of the last couple of years, where grand, you win a Munster and that's great, but actually it's the business end of the season that you need to be ready for, and they were never quite where they needed to be. It looked like they'd taken a significant step back. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a bracing performance from Cork's point of view. Look, with Cork teams, Joe, you can, over the years, Cork teams would have been queried about their work rate, or we'd say, going back a few years, Cork, you know, when teams were playing extra defenders and doing different things from a kind of strategy point of view, and Cork weren't really keeping up with that either. And, you know, you can question Cork's power at times. But one thing that you could, with Cork teams that you would never really query, or the Cork people would never like to see queried, is their touch, their first touch.
their handling, their hurling, their basic hurling. And yesterday their touch was just off. It was really poor. To come to the first round of the championship with so many players missing their first touch was alarming to see it, especially from a Cork team who, as we know, have plenty of really good hurlers. They've shown it over the last 2 years. Like, they won 2 brilliant Munster championships, not just like they won 2 outstanding Munster championships, 2 of the most competitive ones you could imagine. But yesterday just were miles off it, and like so many of their top players just didn't perform at all. Guys who Cork have leaned on in to win those 2 titles. Guys like Darragh Fitzgibbon, a young player, still a young player, 22 years of age, only playing in a 3rd championship, but that was his quietest game for Cork by a mile yesterday. And Cork need him bursting from midfield. Other guys just didn't click either. I mean, Seamus Harnedy was a real leader for Cork, couldn't get going. I'd say Patrick Horton was the only one of the forwards who kind of held up his end. But apart from that, it was just all over the field. Cork were in trouble.
In terms of a recovery from Cork's perspective, the handy trip to Limerick, I think, next week is on the cards for them. So it's like, when you talk about the data coming thick and fast, that's actually do or die from a Cork perspective, really.
Yeah, I mean, like, they can still... yeah, I mean, in theory, 4 points could get you in, and they could be going to Ennis on the last day looking to win up there, which we no joke either. So yeah, I mean, you'd imagine. I mean, the record against Limerick isn't too bad if you go through it. The All-Ireland semi-final fell apart last year in extra time, or they had Limerick cooked with 8 minutes to go, or whatever it was. But they were in a different place last August in terms of their form. I mean, the Cork, you'd imagine that there'll be changes, but looking at the bench yesterday, it's hard to see what players could come in that would make a huge difference. I mean, Bill Cooper was a big loss. I mean, Bill Cooper, actually, probably people outside the panel probably wouldn't appreciate how important he is to the group. He's the real leader inside in that Cork dressing room. So he's a loss. Clearly, if they can get him back, that'll be a help. But they have problems in defence, Ger, and those problems have been knocking around for a couple of years. They haven't started. Tim O'Mahony is a young guy trying to make his way. Mark Ellis, who was Cork's number 6 last year, wasn't even on the panel yesterday. He was travelling for the winter, but he's home, and he's been home for a while. Not sure how he's fixed. Alan Cadigan is another important player that Cork are missing. He was injured again, just literally in the last week or 2. But I'm not sure any of those guys will be there next Sunday. So, look, it's huge. It's a huge game for Cork, no question about it. But you can imagine the atmosphere next Sunday in Limerick. Sure, like their first home game as All-Ireland champions.
Yeah.
It'll probably be 40,000 at the match. 2-3/4 of them are 4/5 from Limerick. That's going to be a hell of a game for Cork.
Yeah, losing your home game in the first match of the championship is a huge blow, and there was the same situation for Waterford yesterday, who Gerlach Nan basically has had some interesting things to say about them in the Irish Daily Star this morning. He says there was no plan at all from them, no aggression, no leadership on the field, and no direction from the sideline. It was a poor afternoon for Waterford up until the last 5 or 6 minutes or whatever it was, Dennis, yesterday.
Yeah, to be honest, I was in Parky Kiev. I know you saw bits of the Clare Waterford game on the RT player on the laptop, which is never that satisfactory. But from what I could see, Clare were out the gap really until the kind of the late push from Waterford seemed to come from nowhere. But yeah, and I was like, look, people in Waterford, there was for all the success that Derek McGrath brought to them over the last 3 or 4 years, and he got so much out of that group of players, and there was always that kind of caveat in Waterford. Why aren't we playing with 5 or 6 forwards? Why are we playing this defensive system? And I don't think there was nearly enough appreciation in Waterford for what McGrath brought to them. And when you look at the league final, and when you look at the game yesterday, I think the kind of approach that Waterford had with McGrath would have served them better in both of those games.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been enough credit given to him, I think, for where he brought this group of players. Now, the other point to bear in mind, I mean, starting the game yesterday, they were short 6 of the players that started the All-Ireland final 2 years ago for various reasons. And they just don't have that many other players to come in of the required standard. But look, it's a really hard road out for Waterford from here. They're playing Tipperary away and Cork away in the next 2 games, so they could be gone before the last game.
You were talking about the Dublin half-back line as one right up there with Tip in terms of the hurling championship. That game, I know you were at that game on the previous night. A 223 to 121 victory for Kilkenny. TJ Reid scores 212. There's the incident with the Mayor Fuerna where he stands and prevents a free from being taken. A wild opening to the championship, really. Yeah, it was.
I mean, in fairness to Dublin absolutely tore into Kilkenny and harassed them and hounded them, and forced turnovers, and there was gang tackling, the kind of thing that you expect from Kilkenny. And Kilkenny were on the back foot, and through most of the Cody era, Kilkenny have been the aggressors in every game they played, regardless of the players they had. I mean, even when they had their star-studded teams, they were still the aggressors. That was the way they operated. And it wasn't until the second half when they turned up the dial and performed the way that we would expect from Kilkenny in that environment. But Dublin, to their credit, managed to put them on the back foot for certainly 45 minutes. I mean, the first goal was probably changed the whole mood. But I mean, it was still level with 11 minutes to go. Even though you sensed the game had ebbed away from Dublin, it was still level with 11 minutes to go. But they only scored 8 points in the second half, which isn't going to give you any chance against Kilkenny.
Dennis, talk to us about the positional switch. That seems to be something of a hugely important thing that Brian Cody came up with in the middle of the game. It's not anything vastly new, but it was Hugh Lawler to full back, who during the league really looked like an impressive number 3 for Kilkenny, and somebody that we might see there for a long time to come. And Pádraig Walsh moved out to centre back. How much of an impact did that have on Kilkenny's purple patch to close the game?
Yeah, it's certainly a fact. I mean, they made a few changes, but Lawler, I mean, obviously Liam Rush had Paddy Deegan in real bother in the first half. So Lawler went back and did better on Rush. Rush came out after that and finished the game. He didn't spend the whole second half inside that full forward, because Dublin had the biggest issue on that Dublin had in the second half was trying to win their own puck outs. They done quite well in the first half and winning primary possession, or actually winning the rucks, winning the ball when it broke. Second half, Kilkenny cleaned them out in the air, and part of the issue, or part of the problem there was, from their point of view, was Pádraig Welch went to left half back, and they were pumping ball down on top of him, and he mopped it up. He certainly won 3 or 4 puck outs, which is a lot. Like Deegan was happier at wing back, but they made those changes and they worked. But the biggest thing was just the increase in intensity. Their tackling, which is the fuel of all Kilkenny performances, was better in the second half. And Dublin's shooting, Dublin's attack forward line just wasn't able to cope with the increased pressure. I mean, in the first half they scored 113 and only had 2 wides, which was excellent. But in the second half, as I said, 8 points just wasn't going to cut it. All right, it's going to be an interesting Leinster Championship as well. Dennis, great start. Thanks a million for joining us. You're welcome. Dennis Walsh giving us some thoughts on the opening weekend of the Hurling Championship. We'll preview the rest of the weekend's action, review and preview next weekend's action in a little while. I want to tell you the breaking news. Brighton and Hove Albion have confirmed Chris Hughton has left the club with immediate effect. He's effectively been sacked, and his assistant and first team coach have also left as well. So just 20 minutes after Stephen Doyle was telling us about the family celebration in his own box at the end of the game yesterday, the news has emerged that Brighton have sacked him. I want to play you this clip and then we'll get some more analysis and reaction to that. Here's the Offaly boss John Mohan talking with Brian Gavin on Midlands 103 about Offaly nearly knocking Meath out of the Leinster Football Championship yesterday. Have a look.
Yeah, we played the better football. The management came up to me afterwards and said, look, there's no question about it, Offaly were by far the better team, and we played some sparkling football, but unfortunately we didn't get the result I think that performance deserved. Nonetheless, you'd be very, very proud. I'm very, very proud of the spirit and the resolve and the resilience and the character that was displayed there today. You couldn't but.
Started the second half, Offaly 9-6 down, kicked 5 points in a row. Fantastic scored, fantastic commitment.
Yeah, wonderful. As I say, we had Meath rattled. They were rattled all over the field. They were rattled on the sideline. I could see that. Obviously, I'm very, very close to the opposing management, and I've been there myself. I know when a team gets a run on you, and they were rattled over the field. They emptied their bench very, very quickly because they were in trouble right around the park. But it is what it is. We can't turn the clock back now, and there's huge disappointment. You can see their heads they're dejected. I know you're saying their heads are up, but nonetheless there's huge disappointment there because the game was there to be won.
Yeah, so that's John Maughan speaking with Brian Gavin on Midlands 103 yesterday in the aftermath of that. Now, John Duggan is here to give us some immediate reaction to the news that Brighton have sacked Chris Hughton after a successful season where they finished 17th and managed to avoid relegation, which is basically the job description, John, right?
It is, Ger, yeah, and he fulfilled that, but they hadn't won a league game since the 9th of March. Maybe the feeling was he'd taken them as far as he could have done over the last 4.5 seasons. So a statement in from the club. Brighton and Hove Albion have confirmed Chris Hughton's left the club with immediate effect. Hughton's assistant Paul Trollope and first team coach Paul Nevin have also left. Chairman Tony Bloom saying Chris has done an excellent job over the past 4.5 years, first stabilising our club, reaching the playoffs in his first full season, securing our first ever promotion to the Premier League and retaining our status in 2 successive seasons. Undoubtedly one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make as Brighton and Hove Albion chairman, but ultimately one I've made due to how we struggled in the second half of the season. Our run of 3 wins and 23 Premier League matches put our status at significant risk. It's with that in mind and the performances during the period, I now feel it's the right time for a change. Chris will always be very fondly remembered by Albion staff and fans, one of our club's finest and most respected managers. I'd like to wish Chris, Paul and Paul, who've all worked extremely hard throughout their time here, every success for the future and thank them on behalf of everyone at the club. They'll always be welcome at the Amex and be remembered here with great affection.
12 months to the day. Well, okay, so on the 15th of May, Brighton announced this time last year that he had signed a new deal that would keep him at the club until 2021. So I hope he's got a whopper package in terms of compensation, but ultimately he's going to be disappointed because he hasn't had the opportunity to build on a season in the Premier League so he's kept the team up now 2 years in a row. I mean, what is really Brighton's ambition here?
I think Brighton's general ambition is to probably be a team around 10th place in the league and have a good cup run and maybe try and win a cup. They were narrowly beaten by Manchester City in the cup this season. Just maybe they feel like he's run his course, and they were really struggling. They lost 5-0 to Bournemouth. They did rally in the last couple. They had a really good performance against Arsenal last week. But maybe Duncan Duffy clearing the skies every week isn't enough, and they need a bit more. And this is the thing with the Premier League, and you get owners in the Premier League that are desperate for success, and I suppose maybe there's a degree of prevention rather than cure. That there's a worry that next season there were 2 places worse this season than last season, and next season they could be in a relegation zone and be relegation. And it's so hard to get out of the Championship. We're seeing with the playoffs in the Championship, it's so difficult to get out of the Championship. Leeds, Derby, West Brom and Villa, like elite clubs traditionally in the English game, and maybe they're thinking, okay, we'll get somebody else in here, play a different style of football and keep ourselves in the Premier League. So maybe there's a degree of Chris Hughton's been the fall guy for the thinking that we have to remain in the top division, and Chris might not be the person to guarantee that'll happen. Has done really well over the years. Of course, at Newcastle, don't think he got a really fair deal there. Got them into the Premier League, didn't last that long. Norwich as well, it was going wrong, and then he didn't really get the chance to see whether it would have worked or not. They got relegated, but yeah, it's not easy. Like if we were talking about Ireland managers, Chris Hughton definitely would be in the conversation, wouldn't he? Like it's hard to manage in the Premier League. It's hard to manage and become a consistent manager in such an elite global league, and Chris has paid the price sadly today.
Yeah, club owners in the Premier League are deluded. It's as simple as that, but quite often it's that delusion that brings you to higher places, and maybe Brighton and Hove Albion have a reasonable plan and a reasonable idea that getting rid of Chris Hughton was actually the best way. I think personally, the first thing you think is this is a bit of a disgrace. As you say, the job description is to stay up, and I'd imagine that was his one and only aim. The thing is, do we get distracted by the fact that Chris Hughton's an unbelievably nice guy, former Republic of Ireland manager? If it was any other personality, would we be saying fair enough? We might be leaning more towards that way. My initial thought, though, is that Chris Hughton's been sacked twice in the Premier League now, and on both occasions he can feel pretty hard done by. But football isn't always fair like that, especially in the top tier, especially when you're down there. They're probably looking at clubs like Wolves steaming past them in the Premier League.
Come on,
which I'm just about to say is a completely ridiculous idea. So, I'm not saying they're right, but
Wolves sold their soul.
Yes, I'm saying the Premier League owners are often deluded, but sometimes that delusion leads to actual success, and it might work out in the short term, but personally, I'm not like when you look at potential candidates to actually take Brighton in their current state and survive again next year, especially as John mentioned, the calibre of teams coming back up. I'm not so sure it's going to turn out so well for them.
I think everybody's looking at Sheffield United coming up and going, well, they're pretty strong candidates to go straight back down. I think it's going to be interesting to see. So the playoffs, obviously, we don't know who's going to be in the final just yet, but Leeds and Villa are already a goal ahead of their rivals in the for the final. So we'll see. But
Norwich as well is hard to predict how Norwich will do next season as well. But like, there's a lot of money at Brighton. Tony Bloom, the chairman who actually owns horses with Willie Mullins, Penhill, the Stayers Hurdle winner, Cheltenham being one of them, worth a lot of money. Like, you know, the club with healthy finances. It's not the case that their club are in trouble. They got a nice new stadium, but you could just even tell yesterday. I know they're playing the best team in the league, but they are a top tier Championship, bottom tier Premier League club. What they want at Brighton is to be in that kind of bracket, probably of whatever 8th to 14th, and stay there. That's just very hard, though. Very hard.
I think their logic is that the bottom 3 that go down next season are going to be better than the 3 that go down this season. Like, we've got to realise that this year's relegation race was particularly weak. Like, I accept your point that Sheffield United haven't been up for a while. We don't know what Norwich are going to do.
Burnley, not that good, really. I mean, they had their season, they regressed to the mean. Bournemouth been managing somehow to have this weird smoke and mirrors thing going on where
the point is Brighton are better than those teams.
Chronically bad investment in recent years. Well, they're not that far behind. So what are they? 8 points behind. Sorry, they're 9 points behind Bournemouth. And they're 4 behind Burnley, and they're 3 behind Southampton. So, yeah, look, he's 60 years of age, and you kind of hope that...
doesn't look it, to be fair to him.
No, but you hope that if he wants another job in football, he'll get one. I wonder now, do the FAI wish that they'd held off on anointing the successor to Mick McCarthy?
But should we know which the FAI plan, managerial-wise, anyways, is set in stone, is it, for the next 3 to 4 years?
It's been an interesting couple of months for the idea of getting ahead of yourself when it comes to managerial appointments. That being said, Stephen Kenny probably is the right guy at some point, but Manchester United have also learned that the excitement of the here and now and sorting things out here and now isn't always the best course of action. Chris, naturally you're thinking a championship job near the top, near a playoff pushing team next season is where he's going to end up.
Yeah, so best of luck to Chris Hughton after that. I think that, I don't know, these managerial decisions.
Look, he's a Spurs legend, and he'll be okay.
I think we've become desensitized.
I hope he screws them for lots of money, right? That's definitely what I hope happened on his behalf. That's all we've got time for, John. Thanks for that.
All right.
Off the Ball is live across our social channels and on News Talk from 7 o'clock tonight. If you missed any of today's show, you can watch or listen back on OTB.com. The show is also available as a podcast. If you search OTB AM, wherever you get your podcasts, we'll be live again from 7:45 tomorrow. Our latest Game of Thrones podcast, Off the Wall, is also going live later on today. And this morning, we're going to leave you with this. Tommy Walsh and Mark Travers were at Waterford against Clare in Walsh Park. Here are some of their post-match thoughts.
I'm joined by Kilkenny former player Tommy Walsh. Unfortunately, earlier I called you a Waterford player and a former Tipperary player. They might have loved to have had you, but they never did. You're a Kilkenny man through and through, so let's get that out there first of all. You're also a banana sandwich maker. Was it the potassium that kept the Kilkenny hurling team going over the years?
Yeah, well, I think banana sandwiches is what my mother gave me every day going to school, so I just got used to them. And they gave me plenty of energy, so yes. It's a nice staple diet, and you can't go too far wrong.
A bit of fat as well with the butter helped the adipose tissue as well.
Yeah, that came from my father. He was always a lover of the Kerry goal, so I had to put that on for good measure.
Who do you think out of Clare and Waterford today had the most potassium? We'd have to say Clare, since they actually won. They had that burst of energy at the end. Even though Waterford did come back, it was Clare that were able to hold on, probably because of Waterford's, I suppose, lethargy really in the first half.
Yeah, I thought really clear, especially in that first half. They just found it that bit easier to score. Like, if we go back to the score at half time, it was 113 to 10 points, and they only won by 1 point, which would suggest Waterford had the better of the second half. But if you go back to that first half, and I was looking at it, I just felt the likes of Tony Kelly and these guys, they were getting them scores that bit easier. I felt for Waterford that to work, and that was down to the aggressiveness, the tackling, the toughness of that Clare defence. Like, straight away to put Pat O'Connor in full back on Stephen Bennett, and he was just up behind him all day long, and every time he got the ball, he earned it. Every time Shane Bennett won the ball, he earned it off David McInerney. Sean Morey went from wing back to the corner. Every time his man got the ball, he earned it. So I just thought it was the clear defence. I just thought were super in that first half. Just regards their body language, their toughness, their sheer ability just to work hard, which is a skill of the game. We must not forget that, because you might have it one day, you might not have it the next day, and you often find if you're in the habit of doing it, you'll produce it most times when you go out. So I thought Clare's aggressiveness and toughness and intensity in that first half, along with their ability to score that bit easier, was the difference. Now you have to hand it to Waterford. When the game looked dead and buried, they came back, went for goals. I felt far too early, but in the end they kept going for their points, and when Austin Gleeson and Maurice Shannon went into the full forward line, they definitely got scores that they needed.
When you were giving Clare praise rightfully in their defence, they're attacking as well, and I know you were questioning earlier, what is the point of winter hurling, hard winter training in November and December, when Shane O'Donnell can go off to Harvard and come back and, as you say, be flying in training without all that horrible training in November somewhere outside Ennis or somewhere really murky that time of year?
Yeah, and I suppose there's only so many fellas can get away with it, and he seems to be one of those. And possibly he was out, maybe, running the roads out in America for the winter, and much better climate and much better weather possibly. So
maybe not in Boston in November.
Yeah, is that where he was? Yeah, no, possibly not. But listen, there's no doubt about it. He was sharp. We've heard it for the last number of weeks that he has been going well. I would have, I suppose, been sceptical. I thought that when you're away for that long, it's just tough. And when it comes to real championship stuff, I think you kind of get found out, and he wasn't today. He stepped up to the mark, won so much ball. He's a great guy to have around for the likes of John Connon, the likes of Tony Kelly, Peter Duggan, guys that would, I suppose, put the ball over the bar 9 times out of 10. And if you have a guy like Shane O'Donnell to pass you that ball, it's a great help.
People will be watching today, and obviously we saw the O'Keeffes, they were great, Austin Gleeson, but another man who was really instrumental today in Waterford, nearly stealing it, Maurice Shanahan. Yeah, Maurice, and it goes back to the aim of the game is to win the ball. And if you're able to win your own ball, it's 9/10 of the law. When that ball came in, he just won it both times. I think it was twice it came in when he was inside and just created havoc. And then you have the other side of it. A guy has to be in form, and Maurice Shanahan looks like he's in form. And maybe it's that bit easier because I suppose Dan isn't a selector this year, and maybe the same pressure isn't there. And it'll definitely look like he will start the next day because the impact he had was brilliant. Finally, you mentioned the next day, because it's the Munster Championship and because it's really wonderful for the likes of us to watch it, it must bring its own pressure for the managers and the players, because now already Waterford, they've lost a home game. And I know I was speaking to their manager and he was saying, we're not under any kind of pressure, but you'd have to be feeling some kind of pressure because you know the intensity of this competition. Yes, and they have to look. I'm delighted to hear him saying that, because that's the way managers have to think, and that's the way they have to believe, because it's so short. They have another game in 7 days' time. That preparation starts now, and that doesn't mean that you have to go start thinking about the game. That doesn't mean that you have to go start looking at video analysis straight away as a player. Maybe it's time to kick back and relax and just let this loss seep in tonight, and then tomorrow morning then just get back to work. And I would definitely say the key thing at this time of year, I think we've learned a lot from last year, is that freshness is key. I think last year most teams that were playing their third week on the bounce lost. What does that say? The guys with the most hunger usually won, because they're all training hard. We know how fit they all are now at this stage. They're not going to lose any fitness over the next week or two. They have all the ball work done. They have everything done. Now it's just time, I suppose, to produce it and not to let any mentality weigh you down. So I'd say Pádraig Fanning was dead right. That's the way you have to talk to your players, tell your players there's no pressure. We've seen Clare this time last year, they lost their first game and ended up top of the table and into a Munster final, and that's the way they should be thinking.